All of a sudden, his key slipped from his hand and clattered to the ground. He panicked, muttering nervously that the damn key had fallen. As he sipped his drink, we are introduced to Kaewok Sayaming, 26 years old, who had come to the city to start a new life alongside his friends. They had endured hardship together, yet Ko never expected that after their first year of success, just as things were finally looking up, his friend would betray him and take everything. After that betrayal, his only thought was to return, but with everything lost, he couldn't find a way out of the abyss filled with nothing but rage, confusion, and sorrow. Standing alone, the man climbed over the rooftop safety railing, his mind echoing with the thought that he had shut himself off from everyone and everything. Believing he could finally be free, he prepared to let go when suddenly, he opened his eyes again, only to hear the steady sound of rainfall. Sitting up in disbelief, he asked himself why he hadn't been able to go all the way. Still in shock, he realized he had jumped from such a great height, and wondered if he was truly so pathetic that he couldn't even manage that. Then looking down, he noticed his hands were bloodied and injured, despite having no visible wounds. Strange groaning noises reached him from nearby. A sudden bolt of lightning tore across the sky, and with wide eyes he saw something he never could have imagined. Completely stunned, he scrambled to his feet, watching a man reaching toward him with an outstretched arm. That man's appearance was unmistakable, his skin gray, his body crawling across the ground as he groaned. A zombie. The boy let out a terrified scream, turned away, and bolted in desperation. As he ran, his mind raced, asking if that really had been a zombie and how such a thing could be possible. Was this perhaps the afterlife? Benny told himself it couldn't be. The rain, the heartbeat pounding in his chest, the pain in his body, the breath in his lungs, all of it had to mean he was alive. Muttering to himself, he said they were everywhere, and wondered how the world had changed while he had locked himself away for an entire month. Out of nowhere, another boy sprinted toward him, screaming for help. But before reaching him, the boy stumbled on a loose floor tile and went sprawling, shrieking in terror. Horrified, eyes wide open, our boy saw with his own eyes that the creatures truly were eating human beings. He spun around and kept running, knowing this wasn't the time to freeze up, or else he'd become the next meal. Yet as he glanced back, he noticed one of them, a girl, was different. She stood perfectly still, emjang the rest, unmoving. Then that zombie girl let out an ear-splitting scream, and from the distance, something darted toward him at incredible speed. Startled, he asked himself how she had spotted him from so far away. The zombie girl kept charging, turning at every corner, determined to find him. He realized then that not all zombies moved slowly, this one was unnaturally fast. With a crazed smile and panic in his eyes, he muttered that this time he was surely dead. Out of nowhere, loud pounding slammed against the door behind him, and he wondered why fear was gripping him again. Starting to sprint, he shouted that the door wouldn't hold much, Eljanger, cursing under his breath. His thoughts spun. He had just jumped willingly, and yet now he was terrified. Another monster turned the corner, and he wondered why his body was desperately clinging to life. Then he saw them, zombies rushing after him. He nearly collided with two more waiting by the staircase as he dashed upward. Behind him, the zombie girl shattered the door apart with one violent kick. And though a part of him thought the quickest end would be to let them catch him, he realized that jumping and being eaten alive were two very different things. And that's why his body refused to give in. Again, as he climbed, he ran into two more zombies and questioned whether this was truly what he had been searching for. In his mind, he recalled confronting his friend Guan Zhang, asking how he could betray their bond as best friends. But Guan Zhang had only smiled coldly, saying he could never grasp common sense, and that it was no wonder he had fallen so far. His now former friend declared that someone worthless and useless deserved nothing more than to be treated like trash and thrown away. Another memory surfaced, his failed attempt to secure a loan. The bank worker, after checking his score, told him there was nothing she could do, even as he begged for help. He remembered how, after seeing how cruel the world could be, he had tried to leave it all behind on his own. But now, racing up those stairs, he felt more determined than ever to keep living. He shoved past endless creatures, yelling at them to get out of his way. His voice echoed as he screamed that he absolutely refused to die here. He ended his thought with a vow. If the end couldn't erase his pain, then he wasn't about to bow down anymore. Hatred flared in his eyes, blazing brighter than ever. The zombie girl lunged furiously at his back, while he clenched his teeth, swearing that he would destroy that traitor Zhang. But for that, survival was the only path. At that moment, a strange system interface suddenly appeared. The zombie's claws slashed, missing him by inches, scraping the wall beside his head. Staring at her hand, he asked himself what in the world was happening. The system announced, "Subject Cao Oxiaming has been redirected. First task has been assigned. Eligible candidate detected. Who will you choose?" Still reeling, he wondered if the employee the system referred to was the terrifying figure right in front of him. The system prompted him again, asking if he wished to accept the employee. At the same time, he recalled the countless zombies waiting just outside. Raising his hand, he muttered that in a situation like this, he had no choice With a swift motion, he slammed his hand down, accepting the employee. Instantly, the zombie girl wrapped her arms around herself as though cradling her own body. She let out another piercing scream, tears welling at the corners of her eyes. A red screen flared across his vision. The employee activation had been successful. Standing before him was now a young woman, beautiful yet scarred, wearing a torn dress and staring straight at him. He admitted he didn't fully understand what was happening, but he already had a first task for her. He ordered her simply, eliminate the zombies around them. Without hesitation, the lightning-fast girl stepped forward, striking down at the zombie on the staircase below. Her blow landed squarely, sending the creature crashing face-first to the floor. She grabbed its arm and hurled the body behind her. The corpse smashed into another zombie, hitting it square in the face. Spotting the next wave closing in, she crouched low, ready to strike. With a sudden split, she kicked out in both directions, slamming two zombies at once. Dropping down to the ground, she shifted smoothly into another stance, preparing again. She leapt upward, springing back up the steps as she passed by Cow. The zombies barely registered what was happening before she was already upon them. With a cross-shaped strike, she cut through them, sending bodies flying to opposite sides of the staircase. And through it all, our boy could only stand frozen, watching in awe at her overwhelming power. In that moment, he realized this system had given him the most incredible employee he could ever ask for. For the first time, he exhaled in relief, thinking maybe it was finally over. Then the system's voice returned, congratulating him for completing the mission and displaying the rewards he had earned. His spoils included a backpack, 100 points, and even a chance to spin the lottery, making him light up with joy. Dropping to a crouch, he quickly opened the backpack. Inside, he found clothes, food, water, and even weapons. Staring at the system screen, he asked himself what exactly this thing was. He decided to try his luck with the lottery. Pressing the huge green button labeled Lottery, the system announced that his ticket was activated. A giant roulette wheel materialized before him, spinning rapidly as the system explained he would receive Ranjiang rewards. Finally, it slowed to a stop, landing on a space near the bottom right. The system congratulated him, declaring he had obtained a memory fragment of Who Show You, leaving him puzzled at what that meant. With a faint smile, he compared it to item drops in games that marked progression, wondering how he might use it. And then, without warning, he was pulled directly into the memory fragment. Still dazed, he found himself in an entirely new scene. He stood before a real estate office called Shanghai, where a young woman sat at the reception desk. From behind, a man approached the counter. The man didn't notice him at all and walked straight through his body. That man arrived at the desk and addressed the girl, asking if she needed anything more. At last he understood he was inside the girl's memory. They couldn't see him nor feel him. Her boss explained she was a skilled new employee, but the company's finances were in crisis. Smiling warmly, she said it was fine. She had come alone from the countryside with little education, so she was simply grateful for the opportunity. Embarrassed, the boss told her they could only pay half her salary for now, with the rest coming once things stabilized. She smiled brightly, overjoyed, and thanked her boss again. He encouraged her to keep up the excellent work she was already doing. The boy stood silently off to the side, watching everything unfold. Later, she looked into a mirror after putting on her new headband, admiring how beautiful it was. She said she had bought it with her very first paycheck and promised herself that ever since leaving home, she would live happily, no matter how difficult things became. She says that sooner or later she'll have her very own house. The boy smiles as he watches her and comments that she really is optimistic. Just a moment later, he finds himself back in his original place, wondering aloud if the memory has already ended. Right after, the system shows a new message, stating that his side mission is to return to the real estate office and recover the girl's hair clip. Looking at the rewards and the mission requirements, he starts to wonder what exactly the system means by an employee's loyalty. He smiles, glances at the girl, and says that after seeing how well she fought those creatures, he'll let her handle them all. But for now, they need to move quickly and finish the mission. Sometime later, we see a tall building with several lights still on, as both the boy and the girl arrive at the real estate company dressed in fresh clothes. The girl, already in her new outfit, continues to kick zombies aside inside the right tower. The boy, also wearing his new outfit, is still amazed at the zombie girl's combat abilities. He stands frozen, simply watching as she throws zombies into the air, and quietly thanks the fact that she's his employee. Heading further up the building, he says that while she deals with the undead, he'd better find her ribbon quickly. Looking beside the desk, near the computer, he finally spots the girl's ribbon. Turning around with the ribbon in his hand, ready to share the good news, he suddenly sees a zombie flying over his head. Startled, he wonders if she's trying to kill him with fright, or simply by tossing zombies in his direction. Then he realizes that when she's fighting, she doesn't care who else is around, hurling corpses in every direction. Yet even in the middle of the chaos, she still pauses to stop and stare at him. Not understanding the meaning of her gaze, he stares back at her. The system then calmly informs him that the employee's loyalty level is very low, meaning she might confuse allies for enemies. He panics as she looks at him like he's nothing more than zombie meat, and starts to wonder if this is what loyalty is really meant for. Sprinting toward a door, he yells what kind of game design this even is, while desperately trying to force it open as the girl follows behind. He finally manages to slip inside, slam the door shut, and shouts that this is the second time she's chased him down. He says that unlike last time, there's no system protection to reduce damage, and shoves a cabinet against the door to block it. Meanwhile, on the other side, the girl pounds relentlessly against the door with unstoppable force. The boy mutters that he has to complete the task fast, because the door won't hold under her strikes for much. Eljanger. He reminds himself he already has the ribbon, now all that's left is the other half of the salary. Behind him, her former boss, now a zombie, is sitting there counting money. Shocked, he mutters that the sight nearly gave him a heart attack, and wonders if this is really the same boss he saw in her memories. Then he realizes the malice. This man lied to her about the company being bankrupt. Staring at the zombie boss, he says he looks exactly like the so-called friend who once betrayed him. And even now, as a zombie, all he does is obsess over money. He drifts off into thought, but the sound of the zombie girl pounding on the door soon snaps him back to reality. Walking over to the zombie, he declares that he'll only take the 2,000 forksel and leave the rest to rot with him. But the instant he touches the money, the zombie's hand suddenly shoots out and clamps tightly around his arm. He freezes, confused about what's happening. The zombie boss stops counting and looks at him with a blank, lifeless stare. Drawing his knife, the boy warns the zombie to let go of him. Instead, the zombie boss growls angrily and charges straight at him. The boy jumps back, arm still caught in the zombie's grip, knife raised in a defensive position. With one swift strike, the zombie's arm goes flying, and the boy mutters that the blade is definitely sharp. Turning to the side, he warns that the next strike will end the zombie's life. But suddenly, something causes his knife to go flying out of his hand across the room. He's left in shock, unable to understand what just happened, as the zombie boss glares at him and lets out a piercing scream. A second later, the zombie leaps on him, forcing the boy to fight desperately to break free. The boss lowers his head, aiming to sink his teeth into the boy. The zombie collapses forward, his jaw grazing the boy's shoulder. Terrified, the boy wonders if this is the moment he finally becomes zombie food. Trying to stay calm, he racks his brain for a way to get the monster off him. He remembers that the zombie was obsessed with counting money, maybe that's the key to distracting him. Stretching his hand to the side, he manages to grab a few nearby bills. He flings the money into the air, shouting for the boss to look. Amazingly, it works. The zombie panics, scrambling after the falling cash as if it might vanish out the window. Cal realizes the trick worked perfectly. He immediately dashes forward, seizes his knife, and charges at the boss, yelling that companies like his always made employees feel worthless. Just before impact, the zombie seems to notice the attack coming. The boy declares he won't accept that kind of world anymore, and brings the blade down in a vertical slash. The strike lands clean, splitting the zombie boss into two halves, one falling left, the other right. Standing over the corpse, holding his knife, he vows that the company he builds one day will never abuse its workers. He finishes by saying he'll treat them like family. The scene shifts back to the zombie girl standing motionless, staring blankly ahead. Cal walks up from behind her, saying the ribbon was a little torn, but he did his best to fix it, and asks her not to run away if it looks bad. After tying the ribbon onto her, he smiles and asks her to take a look. The zombie girl brings her arms in front of her chest, looking deep in thought. Then, as a gentle breeze blows past, she smiles softly. The boy notices her expression, blushes slightly, and then tells himself maybe he didn't see it clearly, while the girl only looks confused. It's then said that this is the beginning of their journey, to build a company in the middle of a post-apocalyptic world, and that he'll search for all of her memory fragments, Zhang the way. We see a city crawling with zombies while Cao narrates that he was once a man who failed, lost everything, and was ready to end his life, until the zombie crisis began. Since that day, 5 whole days have passed, and he's been non-stop exploring the system. Now he's unlocked new abilities, one to recruit zombie employees and another that rewards him for completing tasks. As Zhang, as he uses those powers well, he's sure he can build a SDR Zhang team quickly. The zombie girl continues to kick zombie faces in with the same ease as she had over the past 5 days. The boy now fights alongside her, cutting down zombies with his knife. Smiling, he admits that he hasn't felt this alive in a Zhang time, as if he's finally going through a process of self-recovery. Then he calls out to the system and asks if there are any new tasks. The system presents one: stock up on resources. The boy nods, saying that's good, it's something he actually enjoys. The girl suddenly seems distracted, staring blankly ahead as Cao asks if she's okay. Shaking the thought off, he jokes that they should take advantage of the apocalypse to shop for free. We see a store crammed full of zombies inside. Next, the zombie girl does what she does best, kicking them down one after another. Meanwhile, the boy happily searches for fruit, thinking that thanks to Zioyu clearing out the zombies, He can relax and take his time finding what he needs. Two zombies try to lunge at them, but the girl promptly sends them flying with another effortless kick. The boy notices, however, that her destructive power seems weaker today, not like the last few days. The final zombie she kicked crashes into a shelf, knocking food down to the floor. By chance, this actually helps him find exactly what he was looking for. He kneels, picks it up, and sees it's canned Sanhoi lunch meat. Smiling, he thinks this is all thanks to the zombie girl's powerful kicks. But then he notices her standing frozen in the middle of the store. When he calls again, she turns toward him, and he sees tears rolling down her face. He immediately hurries toward her, asking what's Wr Zhang. But before he can reach her, a zombie suddenly grabs his foot. Only then does he realize the zombie she kicked earlier wasn't actually finished off. To his horror, several more start getting up. The ones she defeated were never truly dead. He quickly grabs the zombie girl's hand and demands answers from the system. Why is she suffering like this? The system explains that she has entered a state of hunger, which drastically reduced her combat performance. Cao urgently asks what he can do to feed her. While dragging her to safety, the system tells him he can exchange points for employee meals. He immediately requests the exchange. Pulling out his knife, he begins cutting down zombies, while the system reports the meal will be ready in 30 minutes. Soon, Cao finds himself surrounded, the zombie girl still behind him. Staring at the swarm, he wonders when so many zombies even manage to get inside. He tries to think of a plan, while the girl continues crying silently at his back. He starts to wonder if this is where he's going to die. But suddenly, he hears a voice calling out to him, telling him to head toward a door. He sees a girl signaling for him to follow her through it. Clenching his teeth, he hesitates, torn about what to do. But then, holding the zombie girl's hand tightly with his knife in the other, he begins running forward, shouting for everything to get out of his way. As he clashes with a zombie head-on, he snarls that they should realize his employee is starving. Throwing himself into the fight, he finishes his words with a growl, saying he doesn't have time to waste. He pushes forward, forcing the zombie back on the edge of his blade, until they both stagger through the doorway. The creature is shoved aside and he manages to step in, clearing the way. Cao slowly pulls himself up, giving thanks, admitting that without that bit of help, he would have been done for. But before he can finish, he suddenly notices a knife pressed tightly against his neck. The girl behind him coldly remarks that there's no need to rush with gratitude just yet. In the next moment, it's revealed that he's completely surrounded, several others standing there with melee weapons aimed right at him. The girl demands he surrender his food, adding firmly that hurting him isn't her goal. Cao weighs the situation, realizing he's completely outmatched until Xiaoyu regains strength. Meanwhile, the others grow impatient, warning him to hand it over now or they'll just take it by force. With a faint grin, he responds that fine, he'll give them food. He casually pops open a can of beans and holds it up for everyone to see. Two men immediately dive in, greedily eating like they've been starving, while Cao tries to calm them down, telling them there's enough to share. The girl, embarrassed by their behavior, apologizes, explaining they searched the warehouse in vain and haven't eaten in 2, maybe 3 days. She admits they weren't always this desperate, but with the zombie outbreak, things spiraled out of control. Cao thinks to himself that he never expected them to choose starving indoors instead of risking the outside, even with monsters roaming. Another man shoves in front of him, demanding both his food and water, but Cao retorts that the man is asking far too much. Someone else from the group claims that since Cao was so generous, he must be holding back more, and losing some extra food wouldn't kill him. Standing his ground, Cao declares that they're too afraid to fight zombies, yet they're brave enough to gang up and rob one person who's in the same mess as them. Suddenly, another man steps up from behind and tells the bigger guy to start searching his bell jangings. Zhang sneers and mocks, asking what a little girl like her could possibly know, insisting the world is already finished. With a wicked grin, he continues, saying if you don't steal from others right now, someone else will steal from you. At that, Cao sighs and says he'll give up, telling them to just take whatever they want. The group immediately starts digging through his supplies, while the zombie girl stands frozen in place, watching in silence. Then something stirs inside, trying to force its way out. As the men move closer to search him, Cao worries that if they seize his weapon, he'll be completely powerless afterward. Moments later, bound by ropes, he slyly reveals that he had tied a can of meat to his leg. Shocked, the men ask if they really heard him right. Almost at once, everyone around him demands why he hadn't mentioned that before. Each of them starts arguing, every person with a different idea about what to do with the hidden meat Cao just revealed. Seeing the opening, he smirks and says whoever wants it can go get it, then hurls the can of meat far away. The can clatters to the ground a good distance behind them. Instantly, they all forget about Cao and bolt after the can. The skinny guy at the front, practically drooling, boasts that the bulky ones will never outrun him. Another man complains, saying now he understands the downside of being fat, since the can landed just a single shelf past him. Suddenly the can hits the ground, but then the man wonders aloud where the skinny guy went. The woman shrugs it off, only caring about the meat. The girl scolds Ziyu, telling him to calm down. Right after, someone shouts for Xiao Zhang to run, while an older woman crouches on the floor, staring at something in horror. Xiao Zhang freezes, stunned by what she sees, unable to make sense of the sudden chaos. Meanwhile, Cao realizes the ropes binding him are painfully tight. He spots the girl and the older man running back, and wonders why they returned so soon. Just then, the zombie girl senses something in the air, her expression still unreadable. Cao demands to know what's going on, and the girl answers in a trembling voice that Almens is eating. She's about to explain when, without warning, something smashes against the wall above them. A grotesque monster resembling a squid with countless eyes and a massive gaping mouth emerges right before their eyes. Cao stares, questioning if it's some new monster or a mutated zombie. A man sprints ahead, screaming, while the creature barrels after him, mouth stretched open to devour. Qiao Zhang and Cao are frozen in disbelief at the sight, while the older man bolts toward the exit. The uncle at the doorway thinks desperately that he can't die here, not in this place. He has to escape. Cao notices his intention and yells at him not to open the door. But as soon as the door cracks open, a zombie face is already waiting on the other side, jaws snapping down. The uncle is bitten instantly, and Cao mutters that they're truly hopeless. With the door wide open, zombies flood into the room. Cao whips out his knife and starts cutting them down, thinking the squid creature isn't as powerful as his Xiaoyu, but he still needs to stall for time. The system flashes a warning that the mission is now classified as dangerous, just as the monster advances toward them. Higaojian ducks behind the zombie girl, who remains just as cold and unaffected as ever. Cao shouts out his subordinate's name in desperation. As he turns, a zombie seizes the chance to lunge at him. But Cao intercepts, striking it down in time, though he grimly wonders if everything will end here. At that moment, the system declares the task dangerous for the host and activates collaborative work mode, linking him with Gusiu. The girl suddenly begins shedding her scars, which instead coil around Cao's body. Watching the marks wrap around him, he questions what this so-called collaborative mode truly means. The system promptly begins explaining the specifics to him. A zombie rushes him, only to be sent flying with a lightning-fast punch. Another zombie creeps up on Xiao Zhang, making her scream in terror. Cao leaps forward in an instant, slapping the zombie aside. Seeing this, he tells the system that maybe it doesn't even need to explain anymore. What just happened already showed him plenty about how it works. Cutting down several more zombies, he asks if his abilities are now equal to his subordinates. The system clarifies that what actually synchronizes are their attribute values. Another zombie lunges from behind, but the zombie girl slams a club down on its skull first. Then she reappears, calmly chewing with food in her hands. Cao sees her and asks if she's fully recharged. He says with relief that having her back makes the fight much easier and just in time. Eyeing the squid monster, he adds that together they can finish it off quickly. The two of them charge straight at the monster. It lashes out with writhing tentacles, but they're far too fast, dodging every strike with ease. The boy edges closer toward the monster. Cao calls out to the zombie girl, and the next moment the monster is brutally struck down. One of the survivors watching mutters in awe that they're unbelievably Str Zhang, grateful he never picked a fight with them. Sometime later, Cao sighs in relief, saying they finally got out, the mission complete and their stomachs full. Xuojing hurries after him, pleading for him to wait. She says that alone she and Xiao won't survive, praising Cao's strength in battle. She tries to continue, but Cao cuts her off flatly, refusing. He explains that food, water, and weapons here will last them for a while, and his earlier help was already payment for their shelter. He adds firmly that he will never team up with someone who once put a knife to his throat. He then presses a glowing button before him, activating the lottery. Cao stares, dumbfounded, wondering if this is actually happening. His shock only grows when he sees the result. Sitting there is a loaf of bread and a steaming cup of coffee. Cao thinks that while he hasn't tasted either in ages, wasting his lottery ticket on it feels like a huge letdown. Meanwhile, the zombie girl, her face still blank, stares at the food, a thin line of drool escaping. Cao notices her unblinking gaze and tests it by shifting the food aside. Her eyes follow without fail. With a faint smile, he hands some to her, and even with her usual blank face, she lights up with quiet joy. The system chimes in, notifying him that giving his subordinate her favorite breakfast boosted her loyalty, unlocking a new skill slot. He smiles at her, promising that if she ever wants to eat something again, he'll make sure to get it for her. At that moment, the system prompts him to choose a skill for the slot. He complains that it would be much easier if he could test them before deciding. The three options appear: Violent God of War, Immortal God of War, and Furious God of War. The system responds that testing is possible, but once the trial ends, one skill must be chosen permanently. They head to the port near yesterday's mission site, a vast area crawling with zombies. Mjang the containers, Cao remarks that there's no better place to test his new skills. Dozens of zombies wander aimlessly between the stacked containers. Sitting atop one, Cao announces that he'll start by testing the Furious God of War. The zombie girl immediately reacts. Stopping in place, she begins gathering energy into her wrist. With a sudden strike, she launches a devastating punch, sending a wave of zombies flying. Kao stares, astonished that a single blow from her could blast them all into the air at once. It's clear now that this ability greatly boosts her efficiency in wiping out the zombies nearby. After that, he tells the system he wants to try the immortal god of war ability. The boy notices that she's drawing the zombies' attention toward herself, pulling in their hatred as if absorbing it. He also realizes that her scars glow green and her wounds begin healing. He understands the ability not only grants regeneration but also lets her provoke the zombies, which he finds seriously impressive. He dashes off, searching for cover, asking her not to lose control and attack him like she did before. Her hair suddenly flares upward as she charges energy for this new ability. He watches her rush forward, tearing through everything in her path, while reading that her attack power spikes enormously. But of course, it comes with a cooldown period afterward. After a short burst of explosive energy, she halts, red energy coursing through her body. Immediately after, she uses a container as a launch pad, leaping straight toward the zombies. We then see the sheer scale of destruction as countless zombies are blasted through the air, dust rising everywhere. One zombie hurtles toward a girl, but she grabs its head in midair. A moment later, energy erupts from her hand, blowing it apart where she caught it. Both Kao and Xiaoyu spot her presence, and the boy wonders who exactly she is. A girl dressed in black, with horns and spikes jutting from her elbows, comes into view. The boy takes note of her spikes, and asks himself if she might be a mutant zombie. Kao immediately bolts across the containers, rushing straight at this zombie. She lashes out with a kick, only for the white-haired girl to block it with ease. Kavunova's remarks that even though the strike carried the strength of the violent god of war ability, the other girls still managed to defend against it. As the two girls clash fiercely, he admits this zombie is unlike anything they've faced before. He realizes the effects of the violent god of war are fading, and if they get dragged into that fight soon, they'll be in serious danger. So he deactivates the collaborative work mode and charges forward himself. Kao urges her to pull back while the mode resets. The two of them sprint away. Glancing back, he mutters that the thing really runs fast. While running, he spots more figures ahead, assuming they're zombies, and draws his knife. But then he suddenly realizes they're not zombies at all, it's a boy, who panics upon seeing him with a knife and yells not to kill him. Kao pulls back his strike and demands to know if he's really alive. Without waiting for a reply, he grabs the boy and drags him out. Zhang. The newcomer squirms, begging him to stop pulling and asking who he even is. Dragged forward, the boy pleads for him to calm down and not panic. Then, the white-haired zombie girl arrives on the scene. The boy who had told him not to panic now loses it, pointing straight at her and shouting that she's a mutant zombie. Kao mocks him, asking sarcastically if he still wants them to relax and not run, but the other boy curses and tells them to run faster. Our boy keeps sprinting, telling himself she may be a mutant, but in the end she's still a zombie, and there has to be some way to deal with her. Suddenly he switches tactics, telling the boy to stick close and follow him. But of course, they run themselves straight into a dead end. The mutant zombie closes in from behind. Kao faces her directly and the two clash once more. Kao worries that his zombie girl might not be able to overpower the white-haired mutant. Turning to the other boy, he orders him to hand over his backpack. The boy hesitates, starting to remove it while asking why. Kao snaps that there's no time to explain, and if he wants to live, he'd better give it over immediately. Reluctantly, the boy hands his backpack to him. Our boy starts swinging the bag and shouts for Xiaoyu to fall back. He hurls the backpack high into the air above the mutant zombie. She slices it apart effortlessly. The bag, packed with gasoline and other contents, splits midair, showering fuel over the white-haired zombie. In the very next instant, Kao warns them to stand back as he flicks a lit lighter toward her. He already starts celebrating before it even hits, and in a flash, flames engulf the area. But even then, it's not enough. The white-haired zombie steps out of the blaze, still advancing toward them. Meanwhile, he yells at the other boy not to just freeze there and to keep moving. The chubby guy panics, thinking he barely escaped. But then he frets, wondering how in the world he'll explain this to the others. All of a sudden, the system notifies him of a new mission. The nervous guy whines non-stop, insisting that Big Sis Meng is going to throw him to the zombies. Then, with eyes lighting up, he asks the boy if he'd consider hiring him. We hear another conversation elsewhere, noting how zombie numbers keep increasing and that people have been spotted coming and going through their territory lately. The camera shifts and we see two people talking. One points something out and the other confirms they see it too. In the next scene, our boy Kao drops down from above, slashing a zombie mid-attack while the chubby guy gawks from higher ground. Then we see a new location where several people are sitting. Moments later, Kao steps inside, declaring he made it, while the chubby guy scurries in right after him. A system window pops up, showing the mission is complete. He mutters that he only got points, then asks what about the lottery ticket. The system replies that he can exchange 100 points for one whenever he wants. Suddenly, the people around them aim weapons their way, demanding to know who they are. The chubby guy blurts out not to shoot, hurriedly introducing himself as Dajo. Another man presses, asking who the others are. Dajo explains he failed to get the fuel, ran into danger, and was saved by these two, so he brought them to meet the leader. The man says the leader is on the roof and that Leilai will escort them up. Kao remarks that he didn't expect to see such a clean spot in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, and the man explains it was an unopened hospital, so the place stayed intact. While Kao observes their camp is impressively organized, we also see Dajo climbing nervously with a tense face. Leilai explains it's only like this because their leader is extremely meticulous. Then we shift to a woman gripping a baseball bat, yelling at someone not to just dodge the zombies but to fight back as well. In front of her, 3 boys face zombies tied with ropes to restrict their reach, and the boys mutter that this is their first time in real combat. The woman shouts that they won't get another chance, ordering them to think carefully, then asks what traits zombies have. One of the boys yells that zombies fear light and get slower in the morning or under any bright source. Another chimes in, saying they're also sensitive to sound. Swinging her bat through the air, the woman declares the third point, destroy them completely. The boys, looking terrified and uncertain, nod that they understand. A man addresses the woman as captain, announcing that Dajo has returned, and she asks if he managed to bring the fuel. Dajo stammers as he steps in, admitting that he didn't. The captain glares, asking how he dares come back empty-handed, warning that without fuel they can't power the bright lights, and the rookies won't survive night training. With a murderous stare, she reminds him he swore 3 times and she gave him 3 chances. Then she erupts, screaming that he's worthless trash and orders him out of the camp by nightfall. She swings her bat toward the other 2, declaring they don't need anyone else recommended by that fool, and demands they leave as well. Cabot steps in, urging her to calm down and not expel people so rashly, then adds that they came here for business. The captain freezes, asking if she really just heard that, then bursts out laughing. She declares her camp already has shelter, food, drinks, medicine, and trained fighters, everything necessary to survive. She finishes by mocking them as just a 2-person team and asks if they seriously think they can deceive her. At that moment, 3 of the restrained zombies break free and charge at them. The rookie boys shriek, saying the zombies escaped and that with nightfall they're even STR Zhanger. One of them screams out a question. Kao snaps his fingers, calling out to SHQ Xalu, who slaps one hand into the other as if signaling she understands. She fixes her eyes on the zombies and leaps straight at them. Meanwhile, Kao states they need fuel and offers to help them obtain it. Everyone around is stunned by the bold proposal. Oi adds that in a zombie apocalypse, friendships and business are not the same thing. Then, as Keishoi crushes zombies, he continues, explaining that as El Zhang as there's profit, he'll be their most dependable ally. The scene shifts to tall buildings in Seo, where someone asks if he really wants to head into a shopping mall right in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. They argue that there's no electricity, no water, nothing useful there. But the boy snaps back that nobody forced him to accept the mission, and since he did, he should quit whining like an old man. The system flashes an E-rank mission notification. We cut back to the past, seeing the captain explain that the mission client has been with them since the very start of the apocalypse. Kao scoffs, calling it a child's mission, and asks what exactly he has to do. The captain replies it's to head to the playground at Udemel. Then we return to the present, where our boy grumbles that to remain in this camp, they'll have to tag Al Zhang with that brat for now. Udavis suddenly yells as a zombie charges from behind, ordering the kid to stay close. Something then smashes into the zombie's head. The boy retorts by calling Cal an old man, introducing himself properly as Wang Ru. He explains he's not going to the mall for fun but to look for his father. Kao realizes from his training that if the man truly is in the mall, his chances of survival are basically 0. Wang replies that he knows, but he only wants to confirm whether his father became a zombie or not. Then he turns to Chao and declares that if his father has turned, he's determined to put him down himself. Right then, the system escalates his mission from E-rank difficulty to B-rank difficulty. The little girl, daughter of the couple, says it's incredible and asks the bear standing in front of her to do it again. Then she turns to her father, who takes off the bear mask and asks why he loves making people happy so much. He points toward the crowd and explains that people often have lonely, sad, or painful days, and asks his son if cheering someone up as they pass by might change something in their day. The boy asks if his father is just joking, but the father replies with a serious expression that he's not joking at all. Our protagonist realizes something feels off, because even though they're on the 3rd floor, they haven't come across a single zombie yet. Aiming his flashlight ahead, he says he hopes it isn't some sort of trap. Suddenly, a strange noise catches his attention. He then sees a mutant zombie, an abomination that looks like several people fused together into the shape of a bumper car. The entire creature resembles a twisted zombie car. The driver grips the wheel, turning it, and the grotesque zombie car suddenly swerves toward them. A horrendous scream erupts right after. That scream wakes up the other zombies, who also begin shrieking. In an instant, they all charge toward the group. Keva mutters that it really was a trap, while Juan says the older boy jinxed them the moment he mentioned the word trap. Our boy immediately calls out for the zombie girl. The zombie girl lands right in the middle of the horde. As she approaches, she winds up for a devastating kick. Her powerful strike lands squarely against the zombie car's bumper. But the driver doesn't seem to register what's happening, still staring straight ahead, clutching the steering wheel in his hands. Enraged, the mutant zombie lets out a furious scream and hurls the steering wheel against the wall in front. The impact is so forceful that it brings the entire section of wall crashing down onto Xiaoyu. Right then he tells Wang Ru to find somewhere safe to hide, but the brat just freezes, stunned, staring blankly forward. The boy's mind flashes back to his father in the bear costume, before reality snaps back again. Cal calls out to W. Zhang, telling him they should focus on hiding first. Our boy is about to ask something, but the kid interrupts, telling him to trust him and to remember his mission. Without hesitation, he begins climbing up the rubble. Just then, a zombie lurches forward with its mouth wide open, threatening to bite. But that's nothing to the zombie girl, who smashes it in the head with another brutal kick. She manages to hold off several attackers, but is clearly starting to get surrounded. One zombie grabs a fistful of her hair and yanks hard. She fights back, suffocating it amidst the crushing horde swarming around her. Suddenly, zombies are hurled flying in every direction as Xiaoyu rises up. He emerges from the pile with his fist raised, panting heavily. He shouts at her, asking if she's forgotten how to fight, especially with the boss still nearby. Landing beside her, Cao tells her to focus on the chubby one while he takes care of the small fry. Their scars resonate between our hero and the girl, and together they charge toward their chosen targets. Meanwhile, the brat walks alone with his flashlight, whispering to himself to stay calm, reminding himself that he trained hard for this. He repeats that if his father is alive, he'll bring him back, and if his father has already turned, he'll kill him. He says firmly that someone like his father would never forgive himself if he became a flesh-eating monster. Next, a figure in a bear costume appears, tattered and filthy. On the way, Izami lying on the ground grabs his foot, making him stumble. Izami asks where that monster came from. The boy glances back and realizes the man in the bear costume really did see him, and in that instant he believes his father is dead. Cal mutters in frustration, wondering why every time he steps outside, he runs into a different type of mutant zombie. He notices that Xiaoyu isn't activating her emergency state like before, which means this zombie must be weaker. The zombie car then shifts strangely, and our boy spots it moving sideways. One of the twisted faces making up the car's body opens its mouth wide. He leaps aside just in time, narrowly dodging the attack. Looking back, he wonders what on earth that was. Was it supposed to be a zombie jet? Meanwhile, the zombie car glares at him, growling. The creature grows angrier, but our hero seems almost amused, smiling at the thought. As the monster fires off 2 more zombie jets, Cao declares that he's figured out how to defeat it. He says confidently that no matter how STR Zhang it is, a car without a driver is useless. The zombie girl, just as Cao, charges straight toward the zombie driver's head at full speed. In the next instant, the zombie lights up like an explosion of fireworks. A few seconds later, it explodes. The bear's head tumbles to the side, exposing the zombie hidden within the costume. It staggers forward, shambling toward the boy. With tears welling up, he begs it not to come any closer, screaming out to his father. His desperate cry is followed by a heavy silence. The zombie halts in front of him, gazing down. Then in a faint voice, it tells its son that what humanity needs most is hope and positivity. Back in the present, we see tears streaming down the brat's cheeks as he clenches his teeth. He raises his weapon with trembling arms, eyes filled with grief, and lets out a yell. He envisions the zombie image of his father in the bear costume, overlapping with the memory of his father alive and smiling, asking him one last time to smile too. With that, the boy completes what he came here to do. Sometime later, we see him talking with Cao, who is carrying Xiaoyu on his back. The brat says his father's final words were truly cool. The boy asks if someday he'll be as STR Zhang as him, saying he wants to become a soldier who makes people laugh. Cao replies that he doubts he could manage that himself, but with such an incredible father, the boy will definitely grow even STR Zhanger than him. Crying, the brat nods and says yes. Kai, after spending several days at the camp, starts taking on more missions and even playing cards. He explains that he's getting Al Zhang better with the people there, and that he's been paying close attention to the mission rewards. These were added to the museum. In fact, they're stored directly inside the system's museum. Cao tells Leilai he can't back out of the bet now and demands the cigarettes he always keeps. He takes one and tries to light it, saying he'll smoke it right then, while Cao calls him a sore loser. He runs after him, coughing violently as soon as he lights up. People around laugh, saying he can't even smoke properly and shouldn't try to act cool. One of them says he's not doing it to look cool, but because it reminds him of his wife. He always lights one when he thinks of her because of the smell. Lao Lai laughs, saying Deshan is 30 years old and still asked Lil Meng to fetch him a stuffed toy. He adds that they live in the county, and since Deshan called them a few days after everything went down, he believes they're fine because they're tough. He then reveals that Xiao also asked Xiao Meng to bring him something, and he's curious to know what it was. The man from the classes dismisses it, saying it's nothing, while another smirks and says he's just being shy. Lao Liu teases that he'll give Xiao Meng his watch if he tells them what it was. The boy finally admits it isn't necessary. He asks Xiao Meng to bring flowers. Everyone goes silent at the unexpected answer. Then two of the men burst out laughing, asking if the flowers ended up in the trash, or if they were meant as a love confession. The man finally says it was Tzelich's sway from logistics, sending the group into another round of laughter. Annoyed, he snaps that his heart has already been broken and demands to know how his friends can laugh at him like that. All of them suddenly pause, wondering aloud what that noise was, questioning if it might have been lightning. That's when the captain appears, hurriedly pulling on her clothes. Our boy freezes in shock. She quickly orders everyone to get up. The captain instructs Xiao to take the weak, sick, and injured up to the third floor, while telling Liao Lai to gather the people and weapons as she prepares a defensive line. Tying her hair back, the girl announces that a wave of zombies is coming. Our boy seizes the chance to ask if she wants to hire them to help with the defense. Immediately, the system confirms an S-rank mission. He's stunned, saying even a B-rank mission was already exhausting enough. Lao Liu puffs his cigarette and mutters that he hopes nothing bad happens this time. Our boy asks what happened before, and Liu explains that the camp's original captain was someone else who died half a month ago, on a rainy day just like this one. As he speaks, we don't see the white-haired zombie who was the killer. He reveals that the one who killed her back at the port where he first met Fat Ju is actually the camp's current captain, Meng Dai. He recalls that on that day, they had only received a wireless transmission, and the leader at the time went out in search of survivors. He notes that it was the first time they'd gone out in the rain since the apocalypse began, not realizing the rain enraged the zombies. The two women often clashed, holding completely different worldviews, even though both were brilliant and equally determined. Suddenly, a man shouts that zombies are in front of them and they're completely surrounded. The former leader orders everyone to step aside so she can deal with them. She draws her weapon and starts firing at the zombies. She swiftly dodges their counterattacks. We then see wires set up across the area, and a zombie stumbles forward, caught around the neck. The woman pulls the wire taut, using the zombie's weight as leverage. Immediately after, she slams her kick straight into its face. As she rises back up, the current captain yells at them to run and not slow down. She shouts a warning for Yan Ji to be careful. Suddenly, a shard of metal flies through the air, striking Yanjai across the face and leaving a deep vertical gash. Out of nowhere, a zombie drops down and lands right in front of her. She locks eyes with it, silently taking on the fight. She knows she has no choice but to lead. Yanjia calls out to Meng Dai, shouting that they need to move forward now or everyone here will die. After a moment of heavy silence, Meng Dai yells to Lao Lai, ordering him to get everyone out. At that time, he ran and drove the vehicle to regroup with the others on the far side before circling back toward the port. As soon as she climbed in, she demanded he start the engine. He asked where Yanjai was, but she only repeated the order. As zombies began to surround the car, he begged again for her to answer. After another Zhang pause, Meng Dai admitted she killed her. Later, when they returned, she claimed Yanjai had wanted to use her as bait to escape alone, that's why she killed her. Many at the camp called her a liar, saying she killed to seize control, and they begged him to speak up since he had been there. But he explains he said nothing because if Yanjai truly was gone, then Meng Dai was the most suitable leader left. He still wonders if she really is the best choice or if he was W.R. Zhang to keep quiet, but our boy says the simple fact that the camp survived proves everything. He turns to the man and tells him his decision was right, that survival under a capable leader matters more than clinging to the truth. The man smiles faintly, repeating the word survive as if convincing himself. Lightning rips through the sky above, making the zombies grow even wilder. The chaos is so intense that our boy realizes what's happening. This is the start of the invasion. On the east side of the building, the captain is barking out orders. She tells the group to set up electric fences on the windows and not to hold back on fuel because survival outweighs everything. One of the men can't believe zombies actually climb windows until one starts clawing its way up right behind him. He freezes at the sight, horrified that it's real. Another man shouts for him to move and yanks up the electric fencing while firing to cover him. More zombies appear swarming the walls, climbing higher and higher. One of them manages to cling to the window, peering inside as it lets out a blood-curdling scream. But before it can push further, the foot of our zombie girl smashes directly into its face. Lao Li whistles and asks Cao where he picked up such an incredible girlfriend, but Cao quickly says she used to train in Chinese kickboxing, and no, she's not his girlfriend. A man rushes over, calling Leal to help reinforce the other side. A zombie sneaks up behind Lao Lai, but our boy shouts not to lower his guard and cuts it down before it can strike. Lao Lai mutters an apology, and together the two begin mowing down zombies. Meanwhile, in the western sector at the third floor's entrance, bodies are already scattered across the ground while survivors flee. The captain orders Desin to wipe out the zombies and re-establish the defensive line, while she holds the stairwell with Xiaoyu. She knows things are looking grim and wonders if she'll be forced to blow up the west side stairs. A boy flees with a zombie at his back but is saved by his friend, who pulls him up and tells him to stand and fight beside the leader. Moments later, the captain orders Group B to switch on all lights. Someone protests they don't have enough fuel. She snaps back that it doesn't matter. If they don't make it through tonight, fuel won't matter anyway. More zombies claw their way through windows, and we see an improvised spear ram through one's mouth. A friend jokes that he's not so useless after all, but the other teases him not to get cocky. He asks how many more headshots with a spear he can land, and the leader laughs, telling him to go test it on a few more zombies. Grinning, the boy swears that once they win, he'll personally help with their wedding. On the eastern defense line, a grotesque mutant zombie covered in spikes lets out a roar. Cal catches sight of the monster behind him just as it leaps toward him. He screams out for Xiaoyu as the zombie closes in, claws ready to tear him apart. But the strike never lands. Our zombie girl intercepts. Cal trembles, realizing just how close he came to dying. He admits if he were just an ordinary man, that blow would have ended him. Back at the western sector, tension skyrockets. A man in glasses takes a fatal wound to the stomach as the leader watches helplessly. Behind the barricaded door, sacks and shells are stacked in desperation to hold it shut. An old woman asks Desin why they're still up here. He addresses her as Grandma Chen and apologizes for failing to defend the camp. Fear erupts among the survivors as they shout they don't want to die yet. The captain commands them to calm down, insisting it's not over, and orders Leal to count heads and give medicine to anyone bit. Seconds later, someone calls her Xiao Wu and begins to speak. She replies that he's already dead, that she hadn't seen him come Al Zhang and thought it was only her imagination. The man apologizes, admitting he couldn't protect him. Cao recalls how that idiot had confessed to her yesterday with flowers in front of everyone. She panicked and rejected him instantly, but later tried to find him, only to realize she never could. With tears streaming, she admits she really did like him. Her eyes brim with sorrow she can't hold back. Nearby, Lao Lai reports to the leader only 9 soldiers and 4 logistics staff remain. The leader says that number is far too low. Wang erupts in fury, shouting that he wants to charge down. He points out Wu was killed by zombies and demands vengeance. He says if they're not going to fight back, then they'll just sit locked up waiting for the end or take action. Just then, zombies slam against the door, pushing hard to break in. Panic explodes inside as everyone screams and stumbles back. The captain orders them to fall back immediately. She thinks she and Stalio could escape alone, but she worries what will happen to the others. Meanwhile, our zombie girl devours her food with speed. Our boy tells her to slow down or Noah will steal her meal. He debates rolling the system's Ranjiang draw, but depending on the outcome, it might be useless. He swipes open the interface, pulling up the HR window where his one and only employee, the zombie girl, appears. As he scrolls, the system prompts him to open a slot for a new worker. He confirms while checking if anyone else is nearby. Cao tells Captain Meng that he needs to leave the base for a while, leaving Xiaoyu behind to help with defense. Quickly, he adds that if he survives, he'll be back soon. The girl calls out, reminding him he accepted her mission. He smiles and reassures her not to worry. He remembers, and after all, they're business partners. He finishes with a promise that integrity comes first. Once again, another. Suddenly, a hand bursts through the barricaded door, followed by a zombie-esque snarling face squeezing through the gap. The captain screams for everyone to hold the line and defend. At that instant, a zombie lunges at Xiaoyu from behind. It prepares to strike, but the zombie girl isn't distracted. She counters immediately. Flashing back slightly, we recall Kato asking her earlier while she ate if she could defend the base for a while. He explained he needed to leave because without his errand the camp wouldn't last until dawn. He told her if she wasn't there, the defense wouldn't even hold 3 hours. He emphasized she would have no orders from him. He wasn't doing this because he thought she could handle it alone. In the pouring rain, our hero crouches against a container hiding. He thinks grimly that he can't rely on the system's approval the way he did with his first maid, the zombie girl. Staring at the system interface, he reveals his preparation, a modified UV beacon, but it's one use only. As he moves Al Zhang the containers, he worries whether the camp can endure the night. He forces himself to focus on survival. If he doesn't, he'll be shredded. A zombie creeps up behind him as he imagines how a mutant zombie could easily finish him. He braces himself, muttering that everything he predicts comes true, and raises his weapon to block. The zombie's strike slams against his weapon, and our boy manages to block the blow. But the next instant, he's hurled backward, crashing into a container with his spine. Before he can even land, the mutant zombie barrels toward him again. But something happens right before it can finish him. Appearing suddenly, the white-haired zombie girl, she intercepts the attack. The mutant zombie shifts and lashes at her, but she slips away. In the same motion, she delivers a clean strike straight into its face. Breathing hard, the girl thinks with relief that she's safe for the moment. Watching her movements, he wonders if she once learned Krav Omega before death. They clash again and again, both showing the instincts of seasoned fighters. Then the mutant grabs her by the leg and slams her face first into the ground. Pinning her beneath its weight, the mutant lanes close, licking her neck as it prepares to finish her. As it does, we see the wound on its arm closing. It's feeding off her, healing itself. Cal struggles, debating his move. If he runs, the camp is lost. But if he intervenes, something worse could happen. He grabs the UV lens and switches it on, forcing the zombies to focus on him. Cal shouts not to even think about harming his own maid. The mutant launches at him, slipping past the UV beam. Just as it closes in, an iron bar pierces its body. The white-haired girl rips free 2 more bars and drives them into the pinned zombie. Our boy mutters that it's finally been defeated, wondering if the explosion came from it being a mutant. The white-haired girl now stands before him, iron bar gripped in hand. A boy nearby shouts to aim for their heads, but another argues they're too fast to land a shot. 3 zombies suddenly leap onto the little brat, ready to tear him apart. But our zombie girl has been watching. She cuts through the 3 in one swift strike, shielding him. The mutant turns back to her, launching another savage attack. In a flash, her shadow is cast against the wall as the strike connects. A man yells not to just stand gawking, reminding them Kato warned to keep distance from her during combat. He shouts again that if they slack off, they'll be the ones dragging her down. Determined, he charges forward to fight the zombie himself. But the creature dodges easily, countering as the man grits his teeth, declaring the girl is STR Zhang. But he can't back down either. He cries out that his wife and daughter are still waiting for him. Collapsing to his knees, he calls their names, Ying H. Zhang, his daughter. Trembling, voice broken, he asks how they ended up here. The 2 zombies draw closer, their faces the memories of who they once were. Shocked, his voice cracks with a smile as he says they came all this way just to find him. Rising to his feet, he spreads his arms wide, telling them how much he missed them, begging them to come home so they can reunite. But reality cuts in. The 2 zombies only lunge closer as he whispers those words. The others witness the scene in disbelief, eyes frozen wide. Exhausted, the girl struggles to push herself upright. Behind them, an endless swarm of zombies approaches. Our boy shouts desperately for Deshin not to go closer, and another girl yells at Zio Wu not to chase after. That girl stumbles, tripping over a trash bin. From it spills a bouquet of flowers. A zombie's foot stomps down, crushing the very bouquet that had once been gifted to her. The zombie then roars ferociously, the sound tearing through the air. The wounded zombie girl grits her teeth tightly. Then with all her strength, she rushes forward. Yet halfway through, her body gives out and she collapses onto the ground. In that moment, she recalls Cao's words, how he said he trusted her. With that memory burning inside her, she forces herself up again, facing the endless swarm of zombies ahead. Those creatures lock their hollow gazes on her. She lets out a raw, defiant scream as she stares back at them. Just then, she notices it was her boss who caught her, telling her to rest properly. He assures her to leave the rest to him, and beside him stands the white-haired zombie girl. The girl lies on the ground, tears streaming from her eyes, screaming desperately for a zombie not to approach her. Before it reaches her, something pierces its skull, sending the creature crashing lifelessly to the side. With NCK, I was saying for Zoe, we'll be resting in peace. Meanwhile, on the other side of camp, a man struggles against a zombie, wondering aloud why Deshan is so STR Zhang. At that instant, the white-haired zombie girl dashes past and lands a crushing strike to the zombie's back. His shameful fight abruptly ended. Cao calls out to Lawlide, telling him to protect Shalu and leave the rest to him and the reinforcements he brought. Still bewildered, Lawlide wonders who this reinforcement is, and who that mysterious white-haired woman could be. The captain then remarks that it seems he has noticed as well. Watching the fight, she comments that despite all the changes, there is no way they could mistake that identity. The white-haired zombie is unmistakably Yan Jai. The zombie then fixes its eyes on one of the targets ahead and charges straight for it. Without effort, she slices its head cleanly in half, as if she hadn't used any strength at all. The scene shifts back a few hours earlier, showing the same white-haired zombie against the backdrop of the port containers. Facing Yan Jai, Cao explains that the camp under her supervision is in deep trouble, and they desperately need her help. When she remains silent for several seconds, he mutters that it isn't working and maybe another approach is needed, so he tries to persuade her in a different way. He tells her he doesn't mind helping her kill Mengdai, but as more seconds pass with no response, he grits his teeth, thinking his persuasion still isn't working. Suddenly, she walks toward him with an iron bar in hand. Panic rises in him as he searches frantically for an escape, convinced he might die right here. In a flash, the girl thrusts the iron bar straight toward the boy's face. Cao hits the ground, and right beside him lies a zombie struck by the iron bar she just hurled. Then the system announces that Yan Jai has agreed to a temporary employee contract with him. Reading the terms, the boy realizes she's only willing to cooperate with him for now. The system further explains that this temporary contract can be revoked at any time at the employee's will. The story returns to the camp, where the zombie cuts down every monster in sight. Cao cheers her on loudly, calling her incredible. The system reports that the zombie criticizes him, calling it nothing but luck, and even mocks that he sounds pathetic when he cheers like that. A zombie holding a megaphone raises it to its mouth. It shouts through the megaphone, pointing forward, and immediately the other zombies move in that direction. Cao then asks the girl if she wants to show off her skills for him. She dashes fearlessly toward the horde of zombies. On the way, she picks up a knife lying on the ground. The system reveals that the employee Gandhi is activating her weapon master skill. Stunned, Cao exclaims that it's just a tiny dagger. How could she possibly be pulling this off? And then the outcome is revealed. Yan Jai has sliced every zombie in half using nothing but that simple dagger. The system explains that her skill transforms any object she holds into a weapon, enhancing its range and power. Once more, the scene shifts to the port containers, thunder rumbling on a stormy night. The captain tells Yan Jai they've shaken off the zombies and might make it back to camp soon. Another person grabs her hand, calling her name. She shows 2 deep gashes across her arm and admits she's not sure she can return. The girl insists she'll find an axe and cut off the arm, saying that as Zhang, as the virus hasn't spread, there's still a chance. She explains that she fought 2 Zhang against that man and is barely holding herself conscious now. She asks the girl not to tell anyone she died fighting zombies and declares that only she is qualified to lead in her absence. Begging her, she entrusts the leadership of the camp in her name. The captain calls her a liar, saying she hides and cries every day because of her, yet somehow always survives. With a faint smile, she says once she survives this night, she'll have her revenge. Meanwhile, the megaphone zombie keeps shouting as another massive horde charges in. The white-haired zombie prepares herself for battle. She grabs one of the zombies and smashes it with a box. Then she hurls a screwdriver, and it pierces cleanly through the faces of 3 zombies in a row. Cao is shocked. How could a simple screwdriver cause such devastating Zhang range damage? The zombie then picks up a tennis ball. The ball smashes into a zombie's face with brutal force, reigniting Cao's hope that they might actually win. Still, the megaphone zombie continues shouting, summoning more and more undead. Cao points urgently at the megaphone zombie and tells Yan Jai they need to take him out immediately. The system warns that it's impossible to get through such a dense crowd of zombies, but Cao argues they should lure the smaller ones their way. At that moment, their eyes meet, and the captain declares they'll handle it. Without hesitation, he opens his backpack, saying he's been waiting to test something. With a grin, he pulls out a mechanical clapping monkey toy. He switches it on, and the noisy toy starts clapping as he yells for the zombies to chase him. Levelized insists he wants to help as well, but another man orders him to fetch more ammo since he's already out. Enigai pauses, watching the boy's strategy and the camp's defenders locked in combat. Suddenly, she slips away, heading straight for the megaphone zombie. In one swift move, its head is severed clean from its body. The rest of the zombies freeze in confusion, not understanding what just happened. Still gripping the knife, she cuts down every zombie surrounding her. The girl positions herself behind one of the zombies, knife in hand. She throws it, but the zombie blocks the attack. Cao cries out in panic, realizing that was her last weapon. She immediately grabs a belt which starts glowing in her hands. Suddenly, one of the zombies' pants falls down. Furious, he yells that she stole his belt. She swiftly loops the belt around his neck and yanks it back hard. Closing her eyes, she exhales calmly, almost serene. The scene shifts again. A man digs into the earth with a shovel. Lao Lai is digging a grave, and 2 weeks have passed since that terrible night. Because of the destruction, the survivors decided to abandon the building. Cao was given several missions in preparation for their departure. Lao Li constantly pressed the captain for the truth of what happened with Yan Jai, and she finally told him everything. Xiaoyu woke after 2 days unconscious and devoured food, but Yan Jai was never seen again. The captain announces they can leave once everything is packed. Lovely asks her if she isn't coming with them. Turning her back, she says she'll stay behind to wait for Yan Jai. Lao argues that it's insane to wait without knowing if she'll ever return, and demands to know how Zhang she intends to stay, pointing out how dangerous it is. She insists she's already decided, and he shouldn't waste time trying to convince her, but he pushes back, asking her to at least say something logical. Meanwhile, from atop a nearby building, Yan Jai silently watches the scene. Cao suddenly appears, asking if she really isn't going to go down there and meet them. She turns as he reminds her that their temporary contract is still active, meaning he can track her. He steps closer, saying that although Lel was suspicious, he endured it for the sake of the camp, and because of her, Meng Dai was overwhelmed. Looking at her intently, Cao urges her to go down and at least say a proper goodbye. For a few seconds, the zombie girl stands motionless, lost in thought. He teases her, saying she's already a zombie and doesn't need to think so hard anymore. He assures her not to worry, that he's right here for her, and again tells her to go down there. Meanwhile, Lao continues speaking. The girl finally tells him to stop persuading her and just leave already. He blurts out that to hell with it, if she stays then they all stay and he'll wait with her. At that moment, Cao arrives and tells them both to quit arguing. Then, bringing Yan Jai forward, he reveals her to the group. Lao shouts with joy, hurrying to the car, declaring this is perfect, now they can finally leave. But Cao clarifies that she isn't here to go with them, she came only to say goodbye. Everyone freezes, wide-eyed in shock. He explains that she's no El Zhang or human, the horns on her head prove it, and for some reason only he can communicate with her. The whole group stands nervously behind Lao, while he assumes they're only reacting this way because of the zombies. And then he asks her directly if she even knows what she has been through during this last month. She explains that after stepping into that role, everyone doubted her, yet she bore all the pressure until she finally brought them together as one. Still, she admits that every single day she questioned her own decisions, fearing she might be the one to break their unity apart. Day after day, she kept asking herself what Yanji would have done in her place. She says that losing her humanity doesn't mean she would betray her because they fought side by side as comrades, and that if Cao hadn't been there, she wouldn't have even tried to give them a final farewell. Yanandria steps closer to the girl and gently places a hand on her head. Meng Dai's eyes fill with tears until they spill over, and soon she's crying openly. Unable to restrain herself anymore, she throws her arms around the zombie in a tight embrace. Cao then speaks, saying he'll be relying on Lao Lai and Meng Dai from here on. The guy answers with a grin, telling him to just leave everything to him. The captain mentions that it was the priciest outfit she had ever bought before the world fell apart, and insists Yankee should take proper care of it. The kid pipes up, asking whether Cao and the zombie girl won't be coming Al Zhang with them, and what they should do if they can't defeat their enemies. The man answers about the zombies, telling him simply to do their best. After that, he tells them to stay positive and remember the advice his father once gave him. Soon after, the three stand motionless, watching the van carrying the survivors drive away. Cao and the NGR remain side by side until he finally says that they've left for good. He glances sideways at her, asking if she has any plans now. She doesn't move, and just then the system screen pops up with a message saying that a new employee has been successfully recruited. The system adds that even though she thinks he grumbles a lot, following him isn't such a bad option for the moment. Ko grins, saying he's perfectly fine with that. Pulling up the system screen, he declares it's time to claim his rewards, seeing that he has exactly 1007 points. Then he says that this time he's going to spin the roulette 10 times in a row. At last, our boy declares that after all his effort, he has managed to collect his very first 1000 points. Smiling, he tells the system to activate the lottery. Brimming with excitement, he announces that today he must be the luckiest man alive. The two maids watch from the side as he eagerly orders the roulette to start spinning. His first prize is a pair of night vision contact lenses, granting him short-range vision in the dark. Next, the boy wins another prize. Cao cheers after pulling 2 blue-quality items in a row, saying he won't need to lug around weapons anymore since he can now summon them straight from the system. After storing away his new weapon, he instructs the system to keep going. A wide variety of items come rolling in: bottled salt, soda, shower gel, rations for employees, and more. The two zombie girls stare as he slaps the ground, cursing his foul mouth, though he still ends up with 2 additional prizes. One is called the Employee Regenerative Potion, and the other is Short-Term Mutation Prevention Medicine. Finally, he lands 2 memory fragments, one tied to Who Shall You and the other a universal fragment. The boy then starts praising the system like it's the savior of the whole universe, which leaves the girls flustered and embarrassed. Our boy starts to wonder who should receive the universal memory fragment, and since his curiosity about Yanji's past is too SDR Zhang, he decides to use it on her. The system confirms the exchange, and with shining eyes, the boy calls the zombie over so he can witness her past. In the blink of an eye, he finds himself standing in a barren desert. Looking around, he wonders where he is, until we see a bald man speaking, saying it's pointless to waste bullets on that squad of peacekeepers anymore. Suddenly, a hand pushes up from a mound of corpses. The girl slowly crawls out of the pile, eyes darting in terror as she takes in her surroundings. Soman remarks that maybe the Snowy Owl unit of peacekeepers wasn't assembled just to deal with the nation's terrorist group. The man goes on, telling her that their near-total annihilation was the result of her saving a single little girl from violence. He says that even one act of kindness can spark alarm Mzhang terrorists, and the bitter irony is that the rescued girl later became a spy. Out of 67 people, only one survived. That's how the Snowy Owl squad came to an end. In the background, a flag waves as the man explains that the intel she provided allowed them to wipe out the wolf group entirely. Kneeling, he places a bouquet of roses before a grave, declaring that the number of snowy owl troops will always be preserved and remembered. The girl beside him stares forward with a vacant, lifeless expression. Turning away, the man says that he was able to accomplish it. He adds that the organization has arranged some leave time for her Al Zhang with psychological care. She's told she can return whenever she chooses, but she responds by asking him to revoke the decision to preserve the Snowy Owl number. Curious, he asks her why. She explains that Snowy Owl will not have a successor. She states firmly that it cannot be succeeded because its true form lies within each person now buried in that cemetery. We never see the man's face, but his name is revealed, Tanya Ye. Afterward, our girl is seen walking past a mural filled with photos including Tanya's. Then she appears alone in the communal bathroom, showering in silence. She leaves the Snowy Owl Lodge by herself, the place completely empty with no one else around. Yanjai steps into a room, salutes, and calls out for Captain Chen. She reports that she successfully delivered the intel and aided in the destruction of the terrorist organization. Tears run down her cheeks as she declares that the Snowy Owl mission is complete. All the while, our boy quietly watches the scene unfold. The girl lifts her gaze, staring at the horizon in silence. At that moment, the system alerts our hero with a new mission, which he brushes off as an easy one. The mission instructs him to visit the captain's residence, and he checks the address on the map. Confirming the location, he tells the system he'll head there, but adds they'll need a change of clothes first since Yamji's outfit is far too torn. Soon the sun rises over the city, making it clear that some time has passed. Exhausted, he grumbles about how frustrating it is. The system says they're close, though it doesn't provide the exact spot of the captain's house. He wonders aloud how he's supposed to find it, then sighs deeply and admits maybe they're just out of luck today. Finally, he stops and decides it's best to look for a place to rest for the night. Just as he finishes speaking, a gunshot rings out nearby. Immediately after, someone's voice echoes, shouting for everyone to hurry. A group comes into view, with one of the men screaming at the others to move faster. Our hero commands his girls to intercept the zombies, while he rushes to protect the survivors. The girls sprint toward the incoming zombies without hesitation. Both strike with mirrored ferocity, leaping down on the undead with chilling, deadly precision. One batters them with brutal punches, while the other unleashes ruthless kicks, each attack just as lethal as the other. Watching in shock, one survivor asks who they bell Zhang to and where they came from. Another admits he doesn't know for sure, but he adds that regardless, they're incredibly STR Zhang. A third warns that there's still a zombie right behind them. Suddenly, that zombie is crushed to the ground as our hero lands on it, driving his new sword straight through. The two survivors freeze, stunned by the sight. With a smile, the boy asks if they're injured and whether they can still stand. One survivor, his mouth trembling, replies that no, they aren't hurt. Still smiling, our hero says they wouldn't have made it if not for their help. Another survivor, wearing glasses, asks if he can lend them a hand. Our hero, though uncertain, responds that it's fine. Then suddenly, the system issues a new mission with a difficulty rating. He's to hear the group out and defeat a werewolf. Our hero questions whether it's truly a werewolf or just another kind of mutant zombie. The survivors explain they don't know, only that they've been trapped there for 4 days. All because they had the misfortune of catching its attention. Kehu smirks, saying now he's intrigued. The man promises that if our hero keeps them safe, he'll be allowed to take whatever he wants once they reach the camp. With a grin, he says he'll hold him to that, while the survivor with glasses calls it a promise. Then the sound of battle erupts from the building ahead, confirming the werewolf's presence. Kehu orders Yenji to face it, assigns Xiaoyu to guard the survivors, and goes off to handle the other side. But out of nowhere, one of the survivors suddenly pulls a gun. Our hero turns confused. The man with glasses wears a crazed look in his eyes, staring fixedly forward. He shouts for everyone to move, and only then does our hero realize they're all carrying either firearms or ranged weapons. Lost in the chaos, our boy can't make sense of what's happening. Yanji lashes out with fury, striking the werewolf straight in the chest. The survivors seize the chance, unloading their ranged weapons on the beast. Our hero yells at them to stop, reminding them his maid is still in the line of fire. But the survivors ignore him, continuing their relentless barrage on the werewolf. He shouts again, ordering EMG to dodge immediately. She turns back with a blank expression, only to realize bullets are flying straight toward her. With great effort, she narrowly evades the incoming fire, ducking behind a car for cover. The werewolf in front of her is shredded by the survivors' bullets. Enraged, our hero grabs one of the survivors by the shirt. He shouts that his maid was still on the front line when they opened fire, but the man insists he was only trying to help. Irritated, he lets go and shoves the survivor away. He tells the survivors to hurry and find a place to hide, warning that with all the gunfire they just unleashed, a swarm of zombies will definitely be drawn in. Then he adds that he's a man of his word, and he will absolutely keep the promise he made to them. Looking straight at Yanju, he tells her to go after them. We see the silhouettes of tall buildings, some of them sending black smoke into the sky. The smoke and chaos clearly mark that combat is underway, while the werewolf continues to run through the streets, howling as it moves. As it dashes past an old rusted car, the werewolf suddenly tears off its door and hurls it straight at the girl. Yanju widens her eyes in shock as she sees the heavy car door spinning toward her at terrifying speed. With remarkable reflexes and sheer strength, she catches the door midair, twists with it, and then flings it right back at the beast. The creature reacts quickly, bracing against a wall and using the impact to push itself forward, continuing its escape. Their battle rages on as they chase and clash through different parts of the building. Cao mutters that the werewolf is clearly injured and must have slipped into one of the floors to hide. A little later, he says the stench is so Zhang, even he can pick it up, meaning the beast must definitely be close. He then orders Yanju to break down the door in front of them. With a single powerful kick, the girl smashes through the wooden door without effort. To their surprise, instead of the werewolf, there's a frightened woman and a child inside. Cao is visibly stunned, unable to immediately understand the situation. Right then, the system notifies him that his mission has been updated, signaling he has finally reached the target location. Captain Chen's house. After a pause, our hero asks if the werewolf had really saved her and the woman nods, saying yes. She explains that she escaped from the camp and the beast helped her. She adds that the camp is controlled by bandits who capture people and throw away the elderly. Only women and children are kept alive, and it was made very clear they do it purely for amusement. The woman goes on, saying she would rather be eaten by zombies than remain there, so one night during a zombie attack she fled. Desperate and cornered, trapped between undead and bandits, that's when she encountered the werewolf. Meanwhile, our hero steps into another room of the apartment. On the wall, he spots a framed certificate of achievement for a hunting dog named Tank. Cao realizes that the rescue and hunting dog once raised by Captain Chen has now evolved into a zombie-like form. He says that the reason the werewolf appeared that night was Likyai because it thought they were in danger and wanted to protect them. He adds that its life must be unbearably tragic, since no matter how many people it tries to save, most of them inevitably turn into zombies. And as he says this, Yanji's old memories come back to him. Suddenly, a loud noise from a screen grabs their attention, and a voice is heard calling out for Tank's help. The survivor with glasses is revealed, pressing a gun against the woman's head. Surprised to see Cao there, he tells him not to worry. With a sneer, he hurls an insult at the woman, claiming she beljangs to him. From somewhere deeper inside the building, someone screams out a desperate no. The man with glasses yanks the woman's hair, snarling that even if he had to search the ends of the earth, he would always reclaim what beljangs to him. Then a voice cuts in, telling him coldly to let her go. The survivors turn their weapons on the boy, while the man declares that no one else in the world needs to see this. He says all Cao has to do is kill the werewolf as promised, and they'll pay him. With a twisted smile, he adds that if Cao wants, he'll even allow him to keep the girl. Cao exhales deeply, telling himself that he's finally staring at the true face of the apocalypse. We then see the furious werewolf, but Yanju throws her hand out, blocking its path, stopping it from lunging at the survivors. At the same time, our hero reflects that dogs have managed to act more human, while humans themselves have sunk lower than animals. One of the survivors asks him if that's his answer, saying it's a pity, because he was even planning to spare their lives. Then the leader raises his hand and shouts, sending the others charging forward with orders to seize the two women. With a calm but chilling tone, Cao calls out to Yanju and Xiaoyu. His eyes carry a dangerous madness as he commands them to strike. Two of the survivors rush at the zombie girls, but a blur cuts past them. One man feels it near his head, the other across his face. A split second later, both their necks twist at grotesque angles, impossible for a human body. Their screams tear through the building, raw and horrifying. Hearing the sound, the other survivors finally realize the girls are zombies, and that Cao is openly siding with them. Panic takes over and they scatter in desperation. But Cao calls out coldly, saying that a rescue dog should never betray its own nature. This part is for them to handle. Meanwhile, one survivor flees while yelling that anyone keeping zombies is completely insane. In his panic, he doesn't even realize he's sprinted right into something, and suddenly he collapses to the ground. Only then does he see Xiaoyu standing in the shadows ahead, clearly waiting for him. Screaming in terror, he feels both girls seize his shoulders firmly. And without hesitation, each girl tears away a piece of him for themselves. Another survivor keeps running wildly through the dark hallways of the building. In his frenzy, he curses his comrade for never giving him a weapon, thinking bitterly that it must have been deliberate, a setup to get him killed. He also thinks maybe he slammed the last door behind him too hard, far louder than he should have. He clamps both hands over his mouth, struggling to silence even his breathing as footsteps echo steadily in the hall outside. The sound of those steps begins to fade, and instead of relief, his panic deepens. Then in a flash, a hand bursts straight through the wooden door beside him. Meanwhile, the survivor with glasses keeps sprinting desperately through endless corridors. Turning, he aims his gun down the hallway and mocks Cao, asking if he doesn't care about integrity, since he's now hunting his own client. Our boy replies coldly that the man isn't worthy of being called human, so he doesn't count him as one. The man's bravado cracks, panic creeping in as he realizes his pistol is out of ammunition. Still running, he tosses the empty weapon behind him, letting it clatter to the ground. Out of breath, he shouts that in this apocalypse they give women food and shelter at the cost of their own blood and lives. Then rounding another corner, he snarls, asking what's so Wr Zhang with using them as playthings from time to time as a form of trade. Cao comes charging around the corner after him, silent but relentless. The man stumbles into an apartment unit, thinking he's gained an advantage. Seizing the chance, he hides and waits, clutching a knife tightly in his hand. Then with a roar, he lunges at Cao, asking if he's planning to send him straight to the grave. Our boy quickly braces his feet against the man's stomach, knocking the wind out of him and sending him backward. Realizing Cao's intent, the survivor rushes to stab before he loses his chance. The knife slices dangerously close to our hero's face, just shy of cutting him. A deafening crash echoes through the room. Moments later, Cao is standing tall while the man lies sprawled on his back across the floor. Our hero declares that he won't just stop him, he's going to take down every last member of that camp. Wiping his cheek clean, he repeats with conviction that he will deal with them all. The survivor laughs bitterly, saying that Cao may have 2 monsters by his side, but the rest of them have guns and psychotic killers who broke out of prison. Cao answers that none of that matters as he calmly draws his sword. Seeing this, the man starts trembling, screaming that everyone in this cursed apocalypse is insane. He hurls insults as he charges forward recklessly. As soon as he's close enough, Cao grips the man's face with one hand. Using his strength, he slams him hard into the ground without hesitation. Cao says this world has Zhang since lost all laws and morals. Humans now make their own twisted rules, following nothing but raw instinct. He adds that he isn't some kind of protector of justice, but his laws of the apocalypse run completely opposite to the man's. Raising his sword high, he says that's all there is to it. Cao stands silently for a moment, then says it's time to start thinking about the next move. We then see a man tied upside down by his legs, hanging from a pole while hungry zombies claw and jump, trying to reach him. He screams frantically for help, begging to be released. A girl's trembling voice pleads for mercy, promising she won't try to escape anymore. Instead of sympathy, the man stomps her face and orders her to shut her mouth. He says the only reason she's alive at all is because she's useful to him, and demands how she dares talk back. Stretching out his hand toward her, he grins and says they're about to have some fun. Suddenly, his hand is sliced clean off, flying through the air. At that moment, we see Cao, the werewolf, and the 2 zombie girls standing on the rooftop of the building beside them. The man from the rooftop plummets downwards, screaming as he falls. Cao, with cold determination, declares that he's the one who's going to put an end to all of them. He adds that if they dare call him Master Cao, he'll make sure to send them to their graves even faster. One of the thugs, bold enough, leaps straight at Yanju. She smoothly sidesteps his strike, dodging with ease. Cao catches him from behind and hurls him across, sending him flying into the building wall. Inside, a woman yells for someone else to look. There's a fight outside, but another warns her to duck or she'll be hit too. Then we see the heavy metal door with bars sealed shut. The warning is repeated, get down. In the next instant, the barred door bursts open from behind her, and stepping through it, the werewolf enters, its face grim and serious. The little girl turns to look, eyes widening in horror, asking if that's the monster the other was just talking about. Meanwhile, outside in the courtyard of the building, the scene shifts again. One of the men is stammering, trembling in the corner, and telling his boss that they won't be able to handle it. Another man adds that aside from the leader, all the others have already been turned into zombies that the boy himself has been cutting down. With confidence, he declares that even the SDR Zhangist zombies would still be terrified of their new weapon, and then he orders for that weapon to be brought out. Yanning suddenly smashes a bottle against the ground, shattering it to pieces. She then hurls the broken glass at one of the henchmen, hitting him square in the face. Both she and Shiyu continue pressing forward, defeating enemies and forcing their way out of the cursed camp. But then we see the barrel of a gun slowly turning in their direction. The man manning the mounted weapon on top of a vehicle grits his teeth and pulls the trigger. The 2 manage to leap aside and dodge, but the gunfire tears through one of the henchmen standing between them. The armored car keeps advancing, firing without pause. From above, we get a full view of the destruction the vehicle and its weaponry are causing in the open courtyard. Cao turns to the people he just rescued and firmly tells them not to leave no matter what happens next. He then looks at the guard dog and entrusts everything to him. The werewolf gives a firm nod, keeping his eyes locked straight ahead. Meanwhile, the tank crew continues firing while shouting taunts, daring Cao to come out. The leader inside the armored vehicle roars, demanding to know how they dare invade his territory, and orders his gunner to keep firing at full power. The gunner, still blasting away, spots the werewolf and sneers, asking if he really thinks he's immortal. Bullets rip into the werewolf, striking several parts of his body. Cao injects him, knowing his wounds will heal much faster, and says he's leaving everything to him, because it's his duty to protect everyone. Almost instantly, the bullet holes across the werewolf's body begin to regenerate. Cao shouts that now is the time for his zombie girls. As they take their positions, he reminds them this is the only chance they've got. He adds with conviction that they absolutely have to succeed. The gang leader grits his teeth, admitting they've got guts. He yanks the steering wheel hard, making the weapon's fire spray wildly in every direction. One of the rounds grazes right through the middle of Shoyu's hair as she keeps charging toward the car, her eyes fixed on it. The gunner screams as he fires frantically in all directions. But it doesn't last. El Zhang, Yamji drops onto him wielding part of a manhole cover, instantly cutting him off. Immediately after, he rips the door right off the car with one hand and flings it far away. Inside, the gang leader begs for his life, swearing he'll give Cao anything he wants. Cao, however, just coldly asks if he's finally learning what fear feels like. Our boy turns away and tells him to hold on to that feeling, bury it deep inside his body. The man thanks him for sparing him. But after a few steps, Cao stops and adds that he should take all of those feelings straight to hell. Then he spins back and strikes the gang leader's head. Later, they clean up Captain Chen's house and secure all the doors. We then see our boy smiling, his two zombie girls standing behind him, as he declares it's time to move forward. He instructs the survivors to leave the city and head north, hoping they can link up with Meng Dai's group, while the tank crew decides to stay behind to escort them. Gazing up at the clear blue sky, he reflects and firmly believes that someday in the future they'll meet again. Smiling, he thinks about how his mission is finally complete, and then wonders if that dog is actually some new species he's never seen before. He pauses to consider the bigger picture with the zombies, realizing how little he actually knows about them. He thinks about heading to the Disease Control Center for answers, but when he realizes how much work it would take to get there, he drops the idea. He admits he doesn't understand any of that and decides he'll only worry about it when necessary. The system notifies him that the mission has been completed, awarding him 30 employee loyalty points as a reward. Beaming, he says he can't wait to see what happens once his loyalty level hits 100%. Suddenly, the system alerts him of the daily interest calculation, showing his current payout is 413 points. Another alert pops up, reminding him that he canceled a Class B mission 3 days ago, and as punishment, the system deducts 10 times the mission's point value. His face falls into desperation when he notices that because of his low points, a 5% interest penalty has been slapped onto his debt again. He remembers moments from the past he'd rather forget, like when he went to the bank begging for a loan only to get rejected yet again. Nervous and frustrated, he tells himself to let it go and just move on, while the two zombie girls stare at him with confused expressions. He then starts thinking about retrieving Xiaoyu's memory fragment and beginning a new mission. A sudden burst of bright light makes him squint. The brightness forces him to shut his eyes tight. When he reopens them, he mutters that entering a memory is always so blinding. He really ought to buy sunglasses next time. Then the scene shifts to a giant rainbow-colored birthday cake. Suddenly, we see her parents and younger brother, all smiling brightly as they congratulate her. Our boy just stands there smiling, wondering if this is really her family. He even questions where she is right now. Next, we see her mother looking irritated, glancing around and asking where the food is. In the kitchen, our zombie girl apologizes, saying she'll finish quickly while chopping vegetables on the cutting board. Her younger brother whines to their father, complaining that his sister bought blue soda when he wanted the red one instead. Their father, distracted by his phone, casually asks if the two aren't basically the same. The boy immediately throws a fit, shouting that they're absolutely not the same. He thrashes around, screaming at the top of his lungs that he wants the red one. As his sister comes into the room, he splashes soda all over her face and blouse, pointing his cup at her and blaming her entirely. With a blank expression, she stands frozen as the soda drips down her face and clothes. The mother scolds her for just standing there, ordering her to go buy the red soda for her brother and clean up the mess. When the girl doesn't react, her mother asks if she thinks it's unfair, telling her it's her own fault because she bought the WR Zhang thing and that she deserves this. Staring in disbelief, the girl finally gives up, sighs, and says she understands. We then move to the front of a 24-hour convenience store. Shoyu steps out of the store carrying a bag in her hand. Inside the bag is nothing but the red soda her brother demanded. She clenches the remaining change in her fist angrily. Then all of a sudden, she spins around and heads right back into the store. We see her alone with a small tart topped with candles as she softly sings "Happy Birthday" to herself. Smiling faintly, she leans forward to take a bite of her little birthday tart. Kao, watching from a distance, hears her quietly make a wish. She hopes to save enough money for university, find a good job, and one day have her own house. Pressing her hands together in front of her face, she repeats to herself that she wants a real home. The system then registers a new mission. Celebrate Shui's birthday, difficulty level D. Our boy gently places his hand on the zombie girl's head. He tells her that even if there wasn't a mission, he would still bake her a cake. Right after, he wonders aloud how her host only ever managed to get her a birthday tart. He vows that even if the world has ended, he's still going to throw her a proper party. A flurry of scenes follow, him pushing her in a shopping cart, her stuffing herself with sweets inside a store. She's far too SDR for the toy she's playing with and smashes it, then grabs the toy gun and fires play shots at cute animal targets. Wearing a goofy costume, she dances around with a giant inflatable mascot. She practically drools when she sees cotton candy right in front of her. She even gets a haircut from the other zombie girl. She picks out new clothes for herself, showing off a beautiful new look. Meanwhile, laughing, our boy and Nyan Jai both hold up scorecards with the number 10. Later, Kev suddenly shows up dressed as a giant red chicken. Shoyu is so stunned she drops her scorecard, while Yenji angrily throws hers to the ground. As Kev looks around in confusion, the zombie girl readies a knife like she's about to feast on him. Both zombie girls then step into the photo booth with their blank, expressionless faces. Not wanting to miss out, our hero squeezes in too, pressing himself against the two of them. Yenji shoves his head right against the camera, leaving him clearly uncomfortable. The printed photos come out looking hilarious, with his face squashed against the corner of the frame. Outside, Shoyu stares at the freshly printed photos in silence. Even with her flat, emotionless gaze, she seems to be deep in thought. Campbell calls out to her, telling her to stop spacing out because it's time to go. She turns and quickly runs after them. The boy warns Yan Jin not to eat that cake. It's been 2 months since the apocalypse started, so it must be spoiled. He then explains that the real reason they came here was to bake the cake themselves. And Kao thinks to himself that once the cake is ready, Shui's loyalty will skyrocket. On one side, they have all the ingredients they need to bake a cake. On the other, they've got a recipe book. Our hero asks Yengi to bring the eggs, only to see them smash against the wall beside him. Sighing, he says he'll get the next batch himself. Suddenly, he notices Yan Jai lifting a sack of flour over her head, ready to dump it straight into the bowl. She's clearly irritated that he's been criticizing her flawless work while he insists it's his fault and that she should just rest. As he cracks the eggs, shells fall right in, then he dumps in a kilogram of sugar and of course adds way too much water. After struggling for a while, he admits it was naive to think he could bake a cake on his own. He'd probably have better luck spinning a roulette wheel. 100 years later, or in reality, just 6 or 7 tries, Kev finally stands proudly in front of his perfectly prepared cake batter, something he somehow managed to pull off all by himself. He's relieved that the generator is finally set up, and with his hand gripping the plug, he thinks to himself that all that's left is to connect the power through the entire store. The moment he flips the switch, a loud blaring sound erupts and music immediately fills his ears. Uneasy, he realizes the store must have been wired with a sound system. That suspicion proves right as the music blasts full volume from the external speakers. Naturally, every zombie in the vicinity turns their heads toward the noise. Our boy instantly feels panic rising in his chest, knowing exactly what's about to unfold. A flood of zombies begins storming forward, charging toward the sound in a furious rush. The power cable is yanked out of the socket in a hurry. Holding the loose cable, our hero mutters that they've been way too careless. Then he tells them to prepare for a fight. Zioyu, dressed in her brand new outfit, dashes ahead and takes her stance. But our boy looks at her and says today she doesn't need to fight. Summoning his sword, he tells her to leave the battle to him and Yanji. After that, he orders the other girl to handle every zombie inside while he takes care of closing the door. Without hesitation, Yanji dives straight into action, engaging the zombies. Kao rushes to the door in desperation, spotting more zombies swarming their way. As soon as he shuts it, the horde slams violently against the barricade, and he grumbles about why they had to cause problems today of all days. Then Yenamus remarks that Yanji is actually using a kitchen utensil, and she's not supposed to fight with that. He shouts that it was meant for baking the cake, not for bashing zombies. She ignores him, grabs another tool from the counter, but our hero scolds her, saying that's not a weapon either. He insists she leave it on the counter, yet the system pops up, flagging her as a threat because she showed intent to attack the boss. While he protests, he worked on that for hours. Still expressionless, she begins flinging plates and cutlery as projectiles. Somehow she nails every zombie with deadly precision, her plates hitting harder than any blade. Meanwhile, Kao pauses to think that simply baking a cake by itself would have been boring anyway. A few seconds later, inspiration strikes him with a bold new idea. He tells Yanji to escort Zioyu to the top floor and promises he'll catch up shortly. Zioyu waves, letting herself be led away by Yanji's hand. Before they go, our hero calls out to Zioyu again, telling her that once she reaches the top, she should close her eyes and wait for him. The two girls then sprint toward the staircase leading to the upper floor. Sometime later, we see him grinning as he declares the cake is finished and everything's in place. The system displays Yanji's status window, revealing he's activated collaborative work mode with her. It's the first time he's ever synced in collaboration mode with Yanji, and clutching the cake in one hand, he crouches like a runner ready to sprint. As he takes off, he realizes the sensation feels entirely different compared to when he collaborated with Zioyu. This link with Yanji is steady, calm, and razor-sharp. Staring down the massive crowd of zombies in his path, he tells himself he can push through. He stomps across zombie faces while balancing the cake in one hand, swearing no one will keep him from delivering it. Louder this time, he yells that no one will stop her from eating her birthday cake. Slipping past a zombie's claw, he declares no one will be able to force her to wait any Aljanger. He tosses the cake up into the air and swings his sword in a frenzy, cutting down wave after wave before it comes back down. In the next instant, he manages to catch it smoothly, balancing it perfectly in his grip. Zioyu stands off to the side, blank-eyed, quietly watching his reckless battle. She follows his command faithfully, closing her eyes with that same hollow gaze. Cao thinks to himself that even if it feels Wr Zhang to waste all this fuel, keeping his employee happy is far more important. Several candles flicker, each tied to thin trails of gasoline. Finally, he tosses one burning candle back toward the puddle, shouting for Zioyu to open her eyes. Still with her eyes closed in focus, she begins to slowly lift her lids. At that exact moment, the candle lands near the fuse leading into the gasoline. And suddenly the entire street erupts in light, fireworks blasting outward in every direction. Grinning from ear to ear, Cao yells that this is his gift for her, limited edition, Apocalypse birthday fireworks. Zioyu, eyes wide in shock, stands frozen, taking in the spectacular colors. Yanji too stares at the display, still gripping a zombie in her hands. Cao runs over, carefully holding out the cake to Zioyu, commenting that the frosting came out pretty smooth. Presenting it to her, he promises that as Zhang as he's alive, he'll bake her a cake every year on her birthday. He invites her to make a wish, and for the first time she demands he smile. Our hero obliges, singing her happy birthday as the last candle flame flickers out. The system then notes that Zioyu thought the cake tasted strange, but out of kindness she said nothing. Beyond the party, the narration shifts, showing us a sea dotted with combat zones and explaining how Sunishoran has grown rapidly in recent years, especially with its elite industries. Thanks to that economic surge, the old city was replaced with residential zones, while heavy industry relocated to the new city. We then get a recap of the adventure so far. In just a month and a half, he has already completed 89 of his 100 missions. Behind our hero, the story continues. He asks about the condition of the bridge, and we're told the man's name is Hoyan. Cao explains he met Hoyan by the river days earlier, then adds more bad news. The bridge is broken, impossible to cross even with a rope. The perspective shifts to Hoyan's group's temporary camp. Their leader is introduced, and since meeting him, our hero has been tagging Zhang. The leader thanks him for the update, and Cao asks if they've discovered anything useful. Another man steps forward, saying he found a boat near the river. Cao reacts in surprise, asking if it's damaged. The man explains it's actually a cruise ship. The engine seems fine, but it's completely out of fuel, which means they'll need to hunt for fuel quickly, since their base resources will only last 2 to 3 more days. The leader grins and asks if Cao can handle that, since he and his lovely helpers are SDR Zhang, while the rest would just slow things down. Cao bluntly says he knows the leader is just trying to save his own strength to guide the people to the boat, and that between them, he might as well just say it directly. Smiling, the leader remarks that our hero is very straightforward, adding that once rewards come through, it won't be so bad. As he heads out, Cao tells them to keep transporting supplies to the boat, which should be ready by nightfall. Passing the zombie girls, he calls to them, saying they're heading out. But just then, someone calls after him, asking him to wait, saying he's coming too. With a bored face, our hero thinks the Zhanger he lives through this apocalypse, the more annoying people become. Later, they arrive at a gas station swarming with zombies. Zioyu, her fist glowing red, charges forward to strike. She unleashes her power, blasting several zombies ahead of her. The system registers a new ability, Heavy Cleaver, dramatically enhancing her combat power but bound by cooldown time. Proud, our boy mutters that this new skill rivals her very first one in strength. Hoyan, awestruck, asks if it's some kind of kung fu technique and if she can teach him. Our hero yanks him by the collar and snaps that this isn't the time, urging him to focus on finding fuel. Meanwhile, the zombie girls continue cutting down the horde, clearing space. Cao slips into the gas station store, saying he'll scout it while telling Hoyan to gather useful supplies. The boy compliments him, saying he's the first person he's seen who volunteers to head straight into battle in this apocalypse. Cao replies that he's a businessman, he helps others, they reward him, that's got nothing to do with kindness. The boy argues that trading fairly is kindness. Since Cao is so SDR Zhang, he could just take whatever he wanted without bothering. Our protagonist scoffs, asking if that's really what he believes, saying he doesn't think so, and admits he's surprised Huyan has survived this L Zhang. As they work together, Cao starts realizing that even though the kid talks endlessly, he's sharp, observant, and quick to act. With a faint smile, he tells the boy he's glad he made it this far. The boy, who had been serious until now, smiles softly, eyes closed in relief, saying he too is grateful to be alive. Then he adds he's even happier he didn't dig his own grave. Cao blinks, not understanding, but the boy lies smoothly, saying he actually meant Cao looks really handsome. That finally gets under our hero's skin, his irritation growing at the kid's chatter. To shake him off, Cao tells him to check the overturned car at the entrance for fuel. The boy snaps a salute, saying he understands, while Cao just hopes for some peace and quiet at last. Outside, the boy finds the overturned car and realizes he'll need to climb onto it. He sets the canister down and begins hauling himself up the rear of the vehicle. Suddenly, he lets out a scream as he slips against a rusted grate that creaks dangerously. Naturally, the corroded metal can't hold his weight and starts giving way. Before he can fall, Cao grabs him by the ankle, sarcastically remarking how cautious he is. With his voice shaking, the boy blurts out that there are zombies under the car and warns him to stay alert. Cao swears in frustration, asking why he's wasting time worrying about others in a moment like this. The boy then asks how big it is, while the scene still shows the two zombie girls back at the gas station. The creature shifts, releasing clouds of smoke from the holes scattered across its body. The boy lifts his eyes in terror, demanding to know what that thing is. The massive mutant zombie suddenly leaps into the air, preparing to strike. Its fist brims with energy before releasing a devastating blast straight at them. Xiaoyu avoids it with ease, dodging the explosion aimed her way. Cao's eyes widen in panic as he realizes the blast is about to hit the fuel pump. Acting fast, he grabs the boy and leaps away, trying to escape the incoming detonation. Moments later, Cao anxiously asks if the boy is all right, and the boy stutters back a yes. In desperation, he begs our hero to figure out what they should do now, because the zombies are far too SDR Zhang. Our protagonist agrees without hesitation. Then, rising to his feet, he tells Quentin to leave ahead of him. He insists he'll serve as the distraction. The boy quickly realizes the plan. He'll take the fuel they collected and prepare things on the other side. As he runs, he keeps talking, promising that he'll wait for our hero. Sword in hand, Cao steadies his breathing, readying himself. The next moment, he charges straight into the fight. Soon after, all three of them are seen storming at the mutant zombie together, launching their assault. The creature is monstrously large, and it's actually handling all three of them simultaneously with little trouble. Our hero is stunned, realizing it truly has the strength to defend against all three attacks at once. The zombie exhales smoke right into the face of our hero, who had come from behind. Xiaoyu is shown clutching her injured arm, struggling to recover. Right after, Yanji staggers, trying to stabilize herself after the earlier blast. Our boy realizes this mutant zombie is on a whole different level, far SDR Zhanger than the rest, and things are looking grim. If it continues like this, they'll be wiped out. Staring at the monster, he resolves at the very least to take its arms. Meanwhile, the scene cuts to the camp where a boat waits at the dock. Someone informs the leader that the fuel has already been loaded, and a signal was sent to notify those at the camp. Hoin lights up, saying that's great, now they just need everyone aboard the boat and for KO to finish off that mutant giant. The gang leader then frowns and asks what mutant zombie he's talking about. From the boat, they look back toward the coastline, where thick smoke is rising into the sky. Looking closer, they spot Cao and his group fleeing from the mutant zombie. Hoya grins, telling the leader that our protagonist is on his way. The leader turns his head slightly, unsettled. Once more, we see our hero's group desperately running from the mutant zombie. Now it's missing an arm, but during the chase, the mutant casually grabs a normal zombie with its hand. It places the zombie where its severed arm used to be. The creature begins to merge with the zombie, regenerating its lost limb. Our hero realizes it's the type that fuses with others, and thinks at least it's lucky there aren't too many zombies nearby. Right after, he steals his thoughts. If they can just make it to the boat, that will be enough. Finally, he raises his eyes to the sea and spots the boat waiting in the distance. He lets out a shaky breath, voice trembling, and sees that they really left without him. The system immediately pops up, marking the B-rank mission of escorting the commissioner to the boat as complete. Our hero stays silent for a L Zhang moment and thinks carefully before summoning the two zombie girls and commanding them to carry out tactics. He curses loudly to draw the mutant zombie's focus. Growing impatient, the zombie leaps forward, slamming down toward our hero. Yamgai spots her chance and hurls a weapon at the beast. Her strike lands right in the giant's chest. At the same time, Xiaoyu swoops down from above, weapon prepared and aimed. The monster raises its arm and manages to block the attack. An eerie eye suddenly opens on the creature's shoulder. Not giving it time to recover, our hero charges in with his sword, aiming straight for its other arm. As he strikes, his gaze flickers toward the boat, bitter thoughts creeping in about how he once again believed in promises and alliances built on lies. His fury intensifies, remembering the false friendships and the same betrayals that have always plagued this world. A sudden noise from behind makes him turn, revealing a massive horde of zombies approaching. And it's not just zombies, humans are amjang them, crying out that the boat left without them. They scream they're as good as dead now, with no escape, pleading for KO to save them. One man is caught by a zombie mid-run, crying out our hero's name. With a cold, detached expression, he says he has no intention of helping. In Greek myth, Sisyphus was punished to push a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll down each time, forcing him to repeat it endlessly. Our hero refuses to become like Sisyphus. The system then reveals a new mission of C-rank difficulty: protect me. Countless windows pop up, all showing the same mission. He pauses, thinking if he saves them now, what happens the next time? Maybe the food runs out, maybe sickness spreads, or maybe betrayal comes again. The boulder will never stay at the top. Meanwhile, a girl is surrounded, screaming desperately for anyone to help her. Our hero dives in, slashing down two zombies that were closing in on her. She crouches with her eyes shut, having already given up, but slowly opens one eye to see what happened. She finds our hero standing there, face blank, cutting down zombies before her. Still fighting off the swarm, our hero keeps striking relentlessly. Deep down, he already knows none of this will change a thing. Two more zombies lunge at him with ravenous eyes and open jaws. Yet again, we watch him carve his way through, killing zombie after zombie. Thinking of his friend Jean, he mutters that now he's beginning to understand him, remembering his words, that useless trash only belongs in the trash. C reflects that once humans gain power and wealth, they really start to believe they're above all other beings, losing any shred of empathy. Once more, he recalls his friend Zhang, admitting he nearly became like him, but vowing never to let that happen. The girl notices that the hero is lost in thought, distracted, and warns him that there's a monster's eye nearby. The giant mutant zombie, with its eye on its shoulder, rises out from a heap of rubble. Emerging through the flames, it lets out a deafening roar, flaunting its overwhelming might. Our hero smirks faintly, calling the zombie girls back to his side. Together, they rush in once again to attack, and the mutant monster, unwilling to back down, charges right at them as well. Moving as one, the group descends with powerful kicks aimed straight at the beast. Our hero hurls a rope, latching it tightly onto the monster's arm. It coils perfectly around its wrist, and at the same moment he leaps up with sword in hand, aiming for a fatal blow. His strike is intercepted, but he immediately shouts for Xiaoliu. She charges in, channeling her heavy strike into her fist. The girl leaps behind the monster and lands her attack, slicing the creature clean in half. Watching the beast fall once again, our hero murmurs that even in a world like this, and even with a power surpassing humanity's, he still wishes to live on as a human. A survivor suddenly points toward the sea, smiling as he tells everyone to look. They see the boat approaching them once more. 10 minutes earlier, someone had gone to the gang leader, reporting a problem with the boat. The leader raised his gun, saying he was already taking care of it. Then 3 gunshots suddenly rang out. Another survivor rushed to the scene, shouting to know what just happened. Seeing the body, he yelled, asking if Hyam really just took out their leader. The boy sneered, questioning whether trash like that could even be considered a leader. The stunned man demanded to know what he was talking about. The boy said that today he abandoned the group because of the zombies, and tomorrow he'd do it again, leaving them all behind. He declared they had 0 chance of survival if they kept following someone like that. Stylian then said that with Tail, at least they had a sliver of hope. Returning to the present, the boat is shown drawing closer to the dock. The boy mutters that he never expected the leader to stumble and fall straight into the water, while Hyan blurts out in disbelief that he can't believe what just happened. Our protagonist, however, feels relieved that he managed to persuade the others to bring the boat back, while Hyan points out they were never really loyal to the leader, only afraid of him, and in truth didn't want to abandon him. Smiling, he then turns to another survivor and asks if he also saw the truth. Nervous, sweating, and talking a bit too loudly, the survivor blurts out yes, exactly that. Cao then remarks that Hoyne has matured, and asks jokingly if he's supposed to get some kind of reward for it now. The boy replies that he'll hand over one of his treasured lunch boxes as a gift. Soon after, we see him leading a group of survivors through the city streets. With the boat, they manage to reach the old part of the city and encounter another group of survivors who had left their hideout searching for help. Cow. Looking ahead, the boy notices smoke rising from behind a building and assumes that must be the camp location the other group had mentioned. He thinks to himself that perhaps there's someone there capable of curing humans who have been bitten, and since some in their group are infected, this may be their only chance. Even though he doubts it, he figures that any chance is worth taking, and if it fails, at least he can put an end to their suffering. Suddenly, a mutant zombie crashes down right in front of them. People in the group point and shout that it's another mutant, making this the 3rd one already. The boy grimly notes that the longer the apocalypse drags on, the more mutant zombies appear. Our protagonist quickly orders Hoyan and Yanji to lead the group toward the smoke, while he and Shiyu Yu provide cover. The two-headed mutant zombie lets out a roar and gets ready to strike. We then see the massive hole left behind from the earlier gunshot. At the camp, a survivor guard shouts that they've received no orders, so he can't allow anyone inside. He warns that if they attempt to force their way in, he will open fire. While fending off a zombie, Hoyan yells back that the group means no harm and only wishes to take shelter from the horde. The guard insists the leader isn't around, and without authority he can't let them in, especially with such a large number of zombies outside. Cao steps forward and says he'll take care of the zombies himself if needed, just let the others inside first. The guard responds that if they eliminate the zombies, then he'll allow entry, but warns again if they try to break in. He'll shoot. The girl thinks to herself that, in a way, his approach isn't entirely W.R. Zhang. Our boy concludes it's simply a matter of wiping out all the zombies gathered here. He activates cooperative work mode with Yen Jai. Tossing her a rope midair, he says they'll execute tactical Operation Coral, and she catches it with ease. Using the rope her leader provided, the girl maneuvers effortlessly through the zombies. Cao shouts for everyone to move aside, and if they can't, then at least duck for safety. Realizing what's about to unfold, Hoyan grits his teeth and moves to assist one of the survivors. Finally, he and Ganji, each holding an end of the rope, circle around the entire zombie group and rush toward each other. As they converge, we see that they've successfully looped the rope around every zombie present. Their crossing pulls the horde tighter and tighter together. Then our hero yells to Zhou Yu, telling her it's her turn now. She begins to gather energy around herself, then launches forward with immense force. She unleashes a massive red energy line directly into the clustered zombies. Glancing back, he realizes that even more zombies are pouring toward them. He steadies himself and warns everyone that countless more are still coming. Our boy notices that the two girls have been fighting non-stop since they crossed the river and must be exhausted, but there's no other option. The flood of zombies continues to surge toward them in overwhelming numbers. Sword in hand, our hero braces to face them head-on. Out of nowhere, a different type of monster leaps from behind him, landing with a thunderous crash that leaves a massive crater in the ground. Soon after, the new zombies that appeared begin attacking the regular zombies, throwing the area into chaos and raising clouds of dust. Watching closely, our hero realizes these creatures are a type of monster he's never seen before. In the middle of the chaos, three figures in biohazard suits observe, commenting that the results look acceptable for a first real combat test. One of them walks toward a girl, asking if she's okay and whether she was injured, and the girl points out it's just a scratch. The suited person calmly replies that it's fine even if someone is bitten, since they've already created a cure, and assures everyone they'll provide food and rest. Cao Luxin takes the chance to ask if he's the camp leader, while thanking him for saving them. The person inside the helmet replies kindly, saying in truth it's he who owes them. Our hero, puzzled and cautious, doesn't understand what he means. Then he sees his old friend Jean, greeting him warmly and saying it's been ages since they last met. A flashback shows a hand yanking a boy's hair, demanding money, while another boy presses his foot against his face, threatening him for refusing to pay for cigarettes as the victim begs to be spared. The blonde boy sneers, saying the beating isn't about the money but the victim's attitude, while the boy keeps apologizing. The blonde adds that he doesn't care if it happens again, he just wants to enjoy himself right now. Suddenly, the boy on the ground starts urinating, wetting the blonde boy's knees. Realizing what happened, the blonde erupts in rage, disgusted by it. Then we see another boy finish, relieving himself. Our boy, just 17, grabs the blonde by the shoulders and orders him to leave the victim alone. The blonde snarls that it's far from over. Since he was peed on, he'll drag him to hell. Before he can move, a bathroom stall door slams right into his face, and another student steps out. Cao hears the flush and stares at the newcomer stepping casually out of the stall. The rest of the bullies in the bathroom stare wide-eyed in fear at what just happened. The newcomer remarks that explains the noise. It was just a bunch of rats squeaking in the bathroom. He looks over at our hero, asks if he needs a hand, and when the answer is yes, asks back if he knows how to fight. Face swollen, the blonde boy on the floor yells at his friends, demanding they get them. The two friends each grab a broom, scream, and charge forward. Our protagonist and his new blonde ally charge right back at them. From outside, voices are heard shouting for them to stop. Sometime later, the two boys are left standing while the rest sit defeated in front of different urinals, beaten and groaning. The boy who was originally being bullied stammers out a tearful thank you, and our protagonist tells him it's over now and he should go. Cao thanks his new companion, admitting he would have lost alone, and the other shrugs, saying it was no big deal. He just can't pee if there's noise. Our hero replies that still most people would have run away, but the other notes he wouldn't either, and both laugh. The boy introduces himself as Zhang, a second-year student from class 3. Our hero introduces himself as Cao, second year, class 16. The two extend their hands for a handshake, but both suddenly remember they haven't washed their hands yet and rush to the sinks first. Sometime later, the two are seen leaving school together, chatting and growing closer as friends day by day. They end up competing in grades and discovering they like the same games. We see them older, both holding their phones, clearly playing the same game. Years later, they even enroll in the same university. Our hero is then shown winning first place in the university's app development competition. We see them exhausted on the subway afterward, leaning against each other to rest. Next, city skyscrapers glow brightly against the night sky. With his mouth full, our hero brags that his theoretical biology app is perfect, blaming the competition instead, and now that it's over, he'll have to revise it again. Zhang, also chewing, asks if he wasn't planning to start a company. Cao says he was considering it, but things at home are rough, and he wouldn't have money to treat his mother's illness if he tried to start a company. Then he asks Zhang how things are going with him taking over his father's company. Zhang says not anymore, and Cao asks why, since he was always so good at managing people. After a pause, Jay Zhangman admits he thinks K was at by DIA is very good and worth investing in. He then proposes they start a company together. While one develops the product, the other manages administration. Di Zhang immediately claims the admin role, and Cao says they'll be working side by side again. His friend grins, adding that they'll climb to the top 500. They clink their beer mugs, thrilled by their shared ambition. He explains they formed a team, built an app, attracted investors, and even landed a partnership with a large company. Then we see Cao being stopped by a security guard while confronting Zhang, asking if they weren't really friends. Jay Zhang turns away without a word. After a moment, he says Cao is like the sun, shining on everyone around him, making them SDR Zhanger. Turning to Shale, he continues, saying his friend always stayed positive and never gave up, and he's curious what will happen this time. Looking at him with a sly, almost malicious gaze, he wonders if Cao will be able to rise again. On his knees, our hero watches his friend and the assistant walk away, leaving him behind. At last, the group reaches the base. Di Zhang removes his helmet and announces that they've made it back. The crowd bursts into cheers. Several people rush over asking if they're injured and whether Zhang has finally returned with them. A girl comes running up in tears, saying the little boy called her useless and that sooner or later he'll kick her out. Smiling gently, he asks why he would ever throw them away, reminding her that when they grow up the camp will rely on them, so they should stop fighting and get Al Zhang. Cao recalls the cruel look on his friend's face, the words "trash bell Zhang's in the trash," echoing in his mind as he watches the scene unfold. An elderly woman nervously asks if people like her, who can't contribute through work, would also be allowed to stay. He immediately tells her he would never drive her out. Then, raising his voice so everyone can hear, he declares that they have new companions joining them and orders food and water to be prepared. Again, he can't help but remember the image of his friend walking away alongside the secretary, telling him to disappear. Our hero turns aside, certain now that his former friend is nothing but a liar. Irritated, he shouts for EMG and signals you that it's time to leave. But just as he's walking toward the door, 2 system beeps ring in his ears. A notification appears informing him of a new mission. He is to remain at the camp and wait for activation. The system then calmly adds that refusal is not an option. If he tries, he'll be forcibly dragged back in about 30 seconds. Stunned, he wonders what on earth is happening. He questions why the system suddenly gave him this mission, and why the punishment is harsher than anything he's seen before. Finally, he asks himself the real question, whether the system is trying to help him or simply messing with him. Out of nowhere, Hoyen, who's been calling his name for half an hour, comes right beside him and shouts it directly in his ear. That finally snaps him back, and Hoyen tells him they're moving the corpses to the examination room. He asks if our hero is coming, and the boy thinks that since the system won't let him leave anyway, he might as well take things one step at a time and see how it plays out. Soon after, he calls out to Zhang. Zhang smiles and says everyone is welcome, that the meditation room is open to all, carefully avoiding any mention of their personal ties. They approach a room with closed doors, marked as a temporary examination room. Inside, a man lies strapped to a bed, screaming and thrashing against the restraints. Olonin frowns, saying something is definitely WR Zhang with his condition. He must be entering the 3rd phase. Professor Khan quickly says he'll double the injection dosage and tells the girl to administer the stabilizer first, afraid it could otherwise trigger a violent stress reaction. Syringe in hand, he instructs her to also prepare the patient's records, but in that instant the man on the bed manages to break free from one of the straps. Zhang, wide-eyed, asks how he possibly did that. The doctor barely has time to turn his head, but Cao is already between them, slamming the zombie down and pinning it to the ground. Turning back, our hero quickly asks if the doctor is all right. The doctor nods that he is fine. The secretary remarks that the hero reacted before anyone else even noticed the man move. then turns to Professor Zai Yu and asks if there's still any chance to save him. The professor replies that in theory, it's possible within the first hour of entering the third stage of mutation. Finally, the serum is injected into the patient's veins. His screams fade as the medication takes effect. Cao, startled, asks if it truly worked, while Hoyan, overjoyed, points out that the man's skin color has even returned to normal. Our hero stands silently, thinking that maybe humanity really does have a chance. And he wonders if that's exactly why the system forced him to stay here. Later, outside the room, the professor thanks him, admitting that without his help he might not have survived. Smiling, our boy brushes it off as nothing, but admits he still doesn't even know who the professor really is. Zhang steps in, explaining he hadn't had the chance to introduce them. When the chaos began, he had nowhere to go and happened to meet these two. He goes on, saying the professors chose to remain in the city and focus on developing a vaccine. They discovered this central laboratory, set up their base here, and from time to time went out to search for more survivors to join the camp. Cao asks if the vaccine is still incomplete, and the ex-friend admits it doesn't even have a 50% success rate yet. Our boy then wonders if his system mission is directly tied to the vaccine. Di Zhang stands silently, lost in thought, then calls his name. He begins trying to bring up the past, the things that happened back, and stammers. After a pause, he suddenly yells that he's truly sorry. Di Zhang admits it's about everything he did to him before, confessing he knows he's not someone who deserves trust. Cao turns away, telling him to just forget it, because he'll never forgive him anyway. Zhang runs after him, insisting he's telling the truth, when suddenly a little girl appears, crying out to Zhang. Tears in her eyes, she asks where her mother is and if she's okay. Kneeling, he comforts her, telling her that her mother is improving but still needs treatment, and that soon they'll see each other again. He gently tells her to go play with the other children, and she happily runs off, waving goodbye. Cao, with biting sarcasm, asks what he did to the girl's mother, that he would throw her out just for being sick. Zhang closes his eyes and explains that the camp is only able to function because survivors like her contribute. Everyone fills a role based on what they can do best, and only through that is the camp sustained. He adds that many people volunteered when they learned of the vaccine project, and the girl's mother was Zhang those volunteers. He explains that testing vaccines is extremely dangerous, which is why he's desperate to complete the research quickly so families can reunite. Zhang admits that he only truly understood Cao after he began researching the vaccine himself, realizing how closed-minded he had once been. The people in the camp showed him that survival depends on helping each other day by day. Before the apocalypse, he was obsessed only with power and wealth, just like his father. But it was only after the world collapsed that he saw how empty those things really were. Anger flooding in, he shouts that his former self was nothing but a complete fool. He insists he's not apologizing to earn forgiveness, but because he genuinely regrets what he did. Cao, still unconvinced, demands to know what exactly he wants from him. Zhang, frantic, says that isn't his intention. Our hero cuts him off, telling him to drop the act and reveal his real objective. Finally, Zhang admits the truth, that Professor Kim once worked at the CDC. He explains that the facility is crawling with zombies, and despite multiple attempts, they've never been able to break inside. He says he wants to join forces with his old friend to retrieve the data stored there. He bows deeply, begging for his help. Desperately, he insists the vaccine is their only chance to survive, and that only with it can they finally end this nightmare. Zhang swears he's serious, even offering to kneel if that's what it takes, but our boy coldly replies that won't make him trust him. The ex-friend extends his hands, pleading for help. He reminds him that whenever they worked together in the past, they always achieved the impossible. Even if the world never returns to what it once was, with the vaccine they could at least rebuild some kind of peaceful life. Our hero thinks this might be the very reason the system ordered him to remain, and he also feels a growing curiosity about how they managed to control zombies. After mulling it over for a few moments, he finally agrees to help. His ex-friend, overjoyed, rushes forward to hug him, but Cao stops him, telling him not to come closer. Staring him down, he makes it clear he has no intention of forgiving or reconciling. He's only helping because of the vaccine. Sometime later, someone calls for everyone to get ready to move, and another confirms the order. The system then updates with a new mission: recover the virus research data. Under a clear morning sky, zombies are seen being hurled into the air. From a distance, Cao asks what those two dog-like zombies are. Zhang answers that those two were the starting point of their experiments. According to Professor Kan, those zombies show a level of intelligence, capable of following basic commands. He explains that during testing, they implanted chips into the creatures' brains, designed to deliver electric shocks if they disobeyed or tried to attack humans. He warns that this mission is extremely dangerous, then asks why the women weren't allowed to rest at the camp. The reply comes that they're his subordinates, and their combat ability actually surpasses that of his controlled zombies. Hoi and Sun Li appear, calling the pair war machines, while Zhang remarks that Cao has been putting up with that boy since El Zhang before the apocalypse. Di Zhang glances at the girls, thinking that maybe Haiyan really is a dependable ally. Running together, the group finally arrives in front of the Center for Disease Control. The professor states that the needed documents are on the 4th floor in the research wing. They don't know how many zombies are inside, so they'll have to avoid confrontation. Someone asks if the professor at least made them a map before leaving. Zhang says he did, but explains that the building is massive and they can't rely on that alone. Meanwhile, Cao notices the staircase area is overflowing with zombies. Looking to the side, he's startled to see they even have binoculars. They begin discussing which path gives the best chance of reaching the 4th floor research lab. After weighing the options, they settle on a strategy. As they move, Cao comments that ever since entering the old city, he noticed the zombies here look different compared to those from the new city. Passing more corpses El Zhang the ground, he adds that their colors look strange here. Hoya notes that there are also a lot more mutant zombies in this area. Zhang explains that, according to the professor, zombies shouldn't be thought of as the undead, but more like a newly evolved species. He continues, saying the variety is expanding daily, and they've now classified them into 2 groups, normal zombies and mutant zombies. Mutants usually enhance themselves, retaining parts of their biology but with altered traits, and they show preference for live prey. Dawn explains that the ones they created for protection are hybrid fusions between dogs and humans. He says an evolved zombie usually requires at least 5 people to defeat, while fusion types can take anywhere from 1 to 10. He concludes that the evolved ones are more dangerous overall since they are smarter. But in the end, he adds, it doesn't matter which type they are. Every zombie still has the same 2 weaknesses, UV light and the brain. Di Zhang raises his pistol, saying the briefing ends here. They've now reached the 3rd floor. Cao whispers for everyone to stay quiet and move slowly, all while wondering why there are so many zombies here and how he can possibly protect everyone. Carefully, the group begins threading through the horde, trying to stay silent and alert for the slightest disturbance. One of the guys thinks that if he'd known things would turn out like this, he never would have come, and once he makes it back, he's transferring straight to logistics. Still, part of him hopes that if he survives, he can brag to Zio, Mei, and the others. Maybe then she'll finally notice him. But lost in his own thoughts, the tip of his weapon scrapes the wall, making a sharp clanging noise. The zombies whip their heads toward him, and Cao yells that they're screwed, telling him to run. Haiyan quickly says they can lead the zombies to the research lab on the 3rd floor, the opposite side of where they need to go since it has an emergency stairwell. Then Cao tosses an alarm clock to Yan Jai, telling her to use it to draw the zombies away to the right hall, promising they'll meet again on the 4th floor. The system notes that Yan Jai actually enjoys these kinds of high-risk situations. She wastes no time, setting off the alarm, the shrill ringing echoing down the hall and instantly pulling the zombies' attention toward her. Shio and Haiyan take off running, shouting back that they'll see her later. Yan Jai bolts forward, clutching the ringing clock as the horde follows her. Finally, the group spots a sign they've made it to the 4th floor. They slip inside and slam the door shut. Haiyan admits they can't keep this pace up much El Zhanger. A survivor turns to Jean, asking what they're supposed to do now. Jean calmly says that our hero and Haiyan should head straight to the research lab at the end of the department. Smiling, our hero teases, "You really trust us that much?" Jean just smiles back, saying that's how he shows sincerity. Keva then calls for Hoya to come El Zhang, catching him off guard. Once inside, they ask Yoyu to stand guard at the door. Walking Zhang rows of dusty files, Cao asks Haiyan how his leg is. Haiyan brushes it off, saying it's nothing serious. Our hero then asks what Haiyan thinks of Jean. Haiyan frowns, asking why he's bringing that up. Cao says Jean seems trustworthy and running a camp that size isn't easy. But Haiyan replies that something's off about him, that he feels like looking at a younger version of Cao himself. Clearly offended, Cao snaps at him not to compare him with Jean. He cuts the topic short and says they'd better focus on finding the documents quickly. They don't know how much time they have. Haiyan scans one folder while Cao flips through another, and almost at the same time, they both exclaim that they've found what they were searching for. Haiyan rushes back, shouting that they got the documents. Jean smiles, surprised things actually went so smoothly. Cao shows the backpack stuffed with files while Jean stares in disbelief. He expected maybe a few, not all of them. He picks up one of the books and asks if they're absolutely sure these are the right ones. Haiyan hands one over, pointing out the serial numbers. They all check out, no problem. Jean nods, relieved, and says they can head back. Suddenly, Seo feels the ground shaking. At first, he thinks it's the walls, but no, it's definitely the floor. Out of nowhere, the ground erupts, sending everyone flying. Cao barely manages to shout for Haiyan to protect his head. Our hero wonders if Yan Jai is behind this. Maybe she ran into a powerful enemy. But when he spots her in front of him, he asks if she sees the same thing. Right after his eyes widen, several zombies have fused into one grotesque monster. He mutters, "What the hell is that thing?" He orders Yanji, who's clutching a stone, to aim for the creature's face. Seo says if they'd arrived just a little later, the fusion would have already been complete. The abomination comes into view, a zombie with 3 heads and 6 arms. Jean quickly commands his 2 experimental subjects to attack it. The mutant casually grabs one with 3 of its hands. In the next instant, it crushes that one, and then the other just as easily. Cao shouts to activate collaboration mode, telling his zombie girls to attack and stop the creature from fusing further. Jiu leaps at the monster. It charges right back, moving shockingly fast. In less than a second, it's already right beside Cao. A devastating punch smashes into his face. He reels back, barely blocking in time, stunned by its speed. Before he can recover, the creature is already on top of him again, jaws wide open. But Yan Jai suddenly smashes a rock into its side. The force of her strike is so strong it hurls the monster across the hall, slamming it into the opposite wall. Cao warns the others the monster's too powerful, they'll need to stay focused, but more enemies are still around. He quickly calls Jean, who's still with the survivors, telling him to get them out. Our hero insists Jean leave first, but Jean refuses, until Cao forces him, saying the vaccine can't be delayed and he won't be dragged out later. Jean stares at him for a Zhang second, then finally nods. Once they're gone, Cao mutters that he doesn't want them to see what comes next. Yanjai throws another stone while Xiaoyu slams the monster in the chest with everything she's got. Cao thinks fast, the monster recovers way too quickly, meaning they'll need one massive hit to finish it. Yanjai's arm is already injured and Xiaoyu's cooldown is 2 Zhang. He orders her to activate her Violent War God ability and combine it with Heavy Slash. The zombie girl obeys instantly, activating both skills. A red aura bursts from her body, filling the room. But she starts coughing, her body clearly straining. Skaven tells her to stop before she breaks herself, but she pushes forward. She lands a strike so powerful it carves a gaping hole straight through the mutant. The monster, unbelievably, starts regenerating almost right away. Cao notices her stance. Could it be she can trigger her ability again while still under Violent War God? If that's true, then cooldown doesn't matter. Without hesitation, she launches into another furious assault. Cao is stunned at the sheer damage she's dealing. She doesn't stop, hacking into the monster over and over. The floor beneath them can't withstand the chaos anymore. Moments later, rubble comes crashing down all around them. Cao yells that Xiaoyu went completely overboard, the whole building is about to collapse. He calls for both girls to retreat immediately. Then he notices Xiaoyu collapse, completely spent. He says she passed out from exhaustion, the combo burned through all her energy. Yanjai is injured too, her arm useless. Saving herself would be the smart choice. But the system reports that Yanjai refuses to abandon her comrades. Cao cuts her off, that's in order. He locks eyes with her blank expression and tells her to trust him. Finally, our hero lets out a relieved sigh. He switches Xiaoyu's collaboration mode over to Yanjai. According to him, as Zhang is there within a kilometer, it should still work. The system confirms collaboration mode has been transferred. Just then, part of the ceiling crashes down, nearly crushing Xiaoyu where she lies. The ground splits apart and her body begins sliding into the hole. Cao grabs a pipe with one hand and clutches her with the other. "I'll never let you go," he growls, though this isn't exactly the best time for a chat. He lets go of the pipe, scoops her into his arms, and says they have to get out now. Then he bolts, sprinting at inhuman speed with Xiaoyu in his arms. He races down the stairwell, blasting through debris and destruction. The building shakes violently, the ceiling crashing around them. He mutters, "Just a little farther, just hold on." Then everything fades, he wakes up, lying in bed covered in bandages. He groans, cursing the pain of waking up so suddenly. Hyan is at the foot of his bed, saying it's been 2 days since Jean returned and saw him carrying Xiaoyu out of the collapsing building. Cao blinks, then asks how Xiaoyu and Yanjai are. Hyan says they're fine, outside right now, playing with the children. We see the zombie girls laughing and running around with the kids. Our hero then asks if anyone examined them. He panics at the thought. If they were checked, their secret would have been exposed. But Hyan just smiles and shakes his head. He didn't let the doctor touch them. Cao's wounds were more urgent anyway. And since Cao looks full of energy again, he must be fine. Hyan says he'll go help out in another part of the camp. Cao smiles, thanking him for everything. As Hyan leaves, he says there's no need for thanks between them. The door closes, our hero sits in silence. Finally, he exhales, relieved. Yanjai and Xiaoyu's identities are safe and their injuries weren't too serious. He pulls up the system interface, reviewing his mission rewards and stats. The system announces that Xiaoyu's loyalty has reached 99%, unlocking a memory fragment for the next roulette spin. A new system window pops up, asking if he wants to confirm the spin. He says he really managed to pull it off, that when loyalty reaches a certain level, he gains a memory fragment. He wonders if the system is showing him what it feels like to max out an employee's loyalty. Then he brushes it aside, saying it doesn't matter. Our boy touches the memory fragment and a bright light bursts in front of him as a voice explains that all that's needed is internet access. The scene shifts, showing augmented reality, virtual reality, and 3D blending into one to form a virtual world. The voice continues, saying it's more than an app. This is something that will open a new path for games and countless applications beyond that. Our boy finds himself standing before a door. Cracking it open, he overhears people saying that even though the project carries risks, it's worth it, because the company poured everything into its development. Inside an auditorium full of people, the voice continues, urging honesty, since everyone's salary is pegged to minimum wage. It adds that real compensation will come in the form of company shares, promising that anyone who joins will receive a large allotment. As he glances upward, another version of himself says he hopes everyone can place their trust in him, so that together they can push forward and work hard for the company's success. The crowd cheers, some shouting that they're ready to join him on this project. That altered self begins to cry, promising he won't ever let the employees down, thanking them through his tears. Tio mutters that if this really is Shalu's memory fragment, then she must have been around during that time. He then questions why he himself has no recollection of this moment. Another scene appears, rows of employees hard at work, and he wonders if she was part of the project team. He finally spots her, remembering she had just joined as an administrative assistant, but he'd been so swamped back then that he never even met her properly. Our boy recalls that at the start, everything in the project was going smoothly. He explains that the equipment supplied by the company's partners was terrible, and because of that, progress came to a standstill. He thinks the issue could have been fixed easily, but the other directors decided to suspend the project outright. He remembers how, not El Zhang after, he went with Jean to try negotiating with them. In that memory, he tells Zhang that if they could just agree, they'd land a new contract with a different supplier and results would come quickly. Suddenly, a man sees him open the door and demands to know what he's doing there. The man warns him that if this is about the project, the suspension is already final, but our hero asks for just a few minutes to explain. He says that at this point he already holds 70% of the cloud gaming market, and if development resumes now, the company will skyrocket in the years ahead. He continues, sharing his dream of building a completely new world with current tech, what he calls the metaverse. The girl beside him says this project is the very foundation of the company, and that if they can just solve the supply issue, the future will be bright. One of the directors then asks Zhang if he feels the same way. They exchange a look, and our boy gives him a firm nod. So trembling in disbelief, someone asks what exactly his friend is saying. Jay Zhang-un admits he never imagined the company would fall into such a serious state, and blames his excessive trust in Cao. Bowing before the board, he apologizes profusely for the enormous losses he caused. One of the directors replies that if that's truly the case, then Shang knows what he must do. We see the eyes of the former Cao shifting into the eyes of a new one. Because of the project's collapse, everyone ended up walking away. An owl-like figure screams in anger, saying it's all Cao's fault for failing to review the initial risk assessments. Because of him, she lost her job. Another man counters, asking what risk assessment she's talking about, since someone else burned through 80% of the project budget with a corrupt supplier. Stunned, our boy starts to protest, insisting it wasn't like that. Another man says he poured all his time into the company but got nothing in return. Now he can't even afford food. Passers-by whisper and call him a terrible person. Suddenly, Zhang appears, telling everyone he tried to convince the directors but couldn't manage to save Cao. Though the company is stable for the moment, he says if people want, they can return to their old positions. The crowd thanks him, cheering, praising Zhang for being so great and reliable. Behind them, Shoyu stands quietly, deep in thought. Our hero returns to reality, leaving Shoyu's memory fragment. He blames himself for starting the project so recklessly. He asks himself if he was the one who decided to throw all the project's funds into it, cutting off the financial flow. Cao keeps questioning whether the project was truly hopeless, wondering if that's why Jay Zhang abandoned him to save himself and branded him trash. The system then notifies him of a new mission, to go back to the company and apologize to his former employees. He covers his face with his hand and begins to cry, thinking that maybe it really was all his fault. Our boy leaves Shui's memory fragment world. The memory closes behind him and he lowers his head in sorrow. As his fingers brush against the wall, the system orders him to head straight to the mission site, saying a special effect will be applied during it. His voice shakes as he feels the negative effect tearing into him, his body wrecked, his heart and mind damaged. He admits he can't delay this mission. He has to face it now and make things right. He tells Yenji to stay put and protect herself, adding that something still feels off about that camp. After walking a while, he and Xiaoyu arrive at the company's front doors. Our hero halts, staring at the company logo, saying that seeing that name again leaves him unsure how to feel. Entering, he notes that the system wants him to apologize to the employees, but there isn't a single body in sight, leaving him at a loss. Some time passes with him wandering through the building. He manages to find a few bell zhangings from employees he knew, but he isn't sure if they all chose to stay in the end, he'll need to check on the computer. As the door swings open, Cao suddenly feels his body grow heavier, sensing a strange presence inside. He hooks Zhang's computer up to his portable generator. Chuckling, the boy says he personally built the company system. If Zhang thinks a few layers of encryption can stop him, he's dead. Wr Zhang. He digs into the employee list, planning to find the printer, but notices something strange about the number of layoffs after he left. Then he stumbles across something odd, wondering what it could be. He uncovers a folder about Zhang's parents and wonders aloud, didn't he hate his father? He finds stacks of files, market research, terminations, and risk evaluations, all different from what he remembers. Then he comes across the name of the company's corrupt supplier. He uncovers videos and documents cataloging the company's equipment and the fees from contract cancellations. Cao pieces together that the legal representative of that corrupt supplier is none other than Zhang's secretary. He recalls that it was the supply problem that got him pushed out, but the real culprit behind everything had been Zhang. He remembers even Shoyu the intern receiving shares, and in the end, it wasn't for employee welfare at all. It had all been a setup against him. He realizes everything he saw earlier was just a truth stacked on lies. He wonders if that's why the system brought him here, to uncover what really happened. Feeling weak, he leans on the wall and tells Xiaoyu to hand him the tablet once the video finishes extracting, because he needs to see it. Looking outside, he spots a heap of corpses fused into a shapeless mass. Zhang them employee badges. He clutches his head, asking how things could have ended up this way. Countless thoughts rush through him, recalling employees wondering why all this happened to them. He says Zhang's true target had been him, but in the end, all those employees were dragged down with him. Shops that had nothing to do with it all were destroyed. Suddenly, Xiaoyu hands him the tablet with the video playing, where someone asks if that thing still works. The person on screen celebrates, saying yes, it works, and introduces herself to our hero as Liu Swenner. Liu explains the team had messages for him but couldn't reach him, so they had to rely on manager Zhang. One man says all he wants to say is stop being careless. Another cuts in, admitting he didn't think Cao would be fired so quickly, and he couldn't even find him to throw a punch. A woman adds that she saw him begging for a loan at the bank. Another girl says her aunt works at the bank and could help him, but that doesn't mean they've forgiven him. She continues, telling him to start over and pay them back, and this time not to repeat the same mistakes. One after another, voices tell him to begin again and make things right. They say he can't give up, and that many of his former employees wanted to appear in the video to speak to him. Many admit they haven't forgiven him, and our hero, his voice trembling, answers that he knows. Resting a hand on Shuli's head, he says that before forgiveness, he cannot die here. Our hero declares he still has unfinished business with Zhang. Leaning against the wall with a faint smile, he tells Xiaoyu to stay back. He'll deal with the monster himself. As he pushes the door open, still smiling, he says he'll finish this quickly. The system announces that collaboration mode for the violent war god ability has been activated. With his tight, our boy draws his sword, declaring it's time to let them rest in peace. Then he leaps straight at the mass, blade in hand. He strikes with a vertical slash, cutting the mass clean down the middle. He spots a badge, Li Kishing, and remembers how they built the initial structure of the project together, always working overtime. Gritting his teeth, our hero mutters he still owes the guy a meal. He slashes again, pressing on. Another badge, Zhang Wind. He recalls how the man cried whenever they had to squash bugs and wonders if he ever got that hair transplant he talked about. Then he remembers Xiao Zhang, who worked like a machine whenever inspiration struck, skipping food and drink. He hopes he remembered to take his stomach meds. He lands another blow, remembering Fu Ligo, who always brought the coffee. He keeps tearing through the mass, recalling his employees as their badges scatter into the air. He remembers how everyone pushed hard back then, and all they needed was that last step to succeed. Charging at the mass again, he thinks, it really was just one tiny step away. Our boy keeps slicing again and again, hacking the mass to pieces. He apologizes as he watches the badges of his fallen employees drop to the ground. He thanks them again, rain pouring down Al Zhang with the badges. Laughing, he says it's only because of their forgiveness and blessing that he could come back and be his true self once more. The system then reports that she had been worried about him and chose to secretly watch over him. He smiles at the girl and says he's fine. Then he adds that they still have a El Zhang task ahead, printing photos of everyone who was part of the project back then. Out on the grass, he's laid out small graves, each with the badges and bell jangings of his former employees. He bows his head and tells them to rest in peace, promising he'll never forget them. Just then, something begins to glow and catches his eye. The system reports that the first part of the mission is complete and the important items will be stored in the memo. He looks up, wondering if this is the system's version of a museum. He questions if it doesn't just store items, but also things that carry real meaning. That's when it hits him, joining this company wasn't just a job for them, it was something deeply important. He tells Yoyu that ever since the project failed, he's always wondered if he'd been a good boss. And today, he thinks he finally got his answer. Because of that, he's decided which path he'll take moving forward. But first, he says they'll carry the hopes of everyone and settle things with Zhang. The system confirms it, reporting that the next mission is to confront Jie Zhang, and it's ranked S-level difficulty. The scene rewinds a little 2 hours after Cao left for his mission at camp. The professor announces that the vaccine has finally been improved. He explains that the results from experiments 1 and 2 were critical to getting this far. Zhang comments that after burning through so much energy, it's time to see the final outcome, while the professor suggests they move to the test site since only one last step remains. Zhang, looking down thoughtfully, repeats it back, the final step. Yes, the final step. Meanwhile, Hoin is watching them from a distance. He remembers what Cao told him, that the disease was coming back, and he was heading out to look for a cure. He also warned that something about Jie Zhang wasn't right. So Hoin should stay careful until his return, and if anything feels off, he should talk to ENG. Now Hoin is left wondering where those two are going, and what exactly this improved super vaccine is supposed to be. He tells himself this is the perfect chance. He has to take advantage of their absence and investigate. We cut to the central air vent. A pair of hands removes the grate. Hoin drops down, whispering that he doesn't know how Zhang they'll be gone, so he has to work fast. Looking around, he wonders where Professor Khan's office might be. Suddenly, voices echo, asking if the door is locked. 2 others reply, saying of course it is, and joke that since they're always the last ones out, there's never any food left anyway. Hoin thinks everyone's gone and starts to move, but then someone calls out to him. He turns and sees the professor standing there, staring at him. She asks what he's doing here. His whole body tenses at the sight of her. Before she can say anything more, Hoin rushes forward, covers her mouth with his hand, and silences her. He raises his knife, apologizing softly, saying she shouldn't have gotten in his way. He brings the blade down toward her, but she reacts instantly, blocking the strike to her chest with her bare hand. Hoin's face stays blank as he realizes she stopped it, and he pulls the knife back. The professor asks where he's trying to go. She'll take him, just don't send her to the grave yet. Hoin smirks and says so she wants to live. He thought she was the type who wasn't afraid of death. She answers that it's because she still has things she absolutely must do, and that's why she can't die here. They stare at each other in silence. Then Hoin smiles, points the knife at her, and tells her to lead the way. The professor asks what exactly he's searching for. She's already combed through the computer and shelves. With her injured hand now bandaged, she says there's nothing there but research material. He replies he's not looking for anything specific, just investigating. She insists she understands his doubts, but the vaccine really was carefully developed and improved through her work. There's nothing shady about it. Hoin suddenly asks about Shina's mother, remembering the little girl in tears asking where her mom was. The professor freezes at the question. With a sorrowful look, she admits some of the last volunteers died due to immune rejection, and Shina's mother was one of them. It happened so fast, she says. Her mother passed before there was even a chance to save her. Professor Khan had to step in and help with the funeral because she couldn't handle it herself. She tells Hoin she couldn't bring herself to tell the child the truth, but that doesn't mean Khan did anything Wr Zhang. She says the world is already broken enough. What reason would she have to lie? Hoin narrows his eyes. Unlike her, he says, the professor seems far more suspicious, surrounded by medical texts on viruses, diseases, and anatomy. Then, standing in front of the bookshelf, something catches his attention. Why is that book mixed in with the medical volumes? He pulls it out. Inside, a chip falls to the ground. He picks it up with a grin, saying, so that's where it was hidden. Nice job covering it up. Hoin tells her he's going to borrow the computer. On the screen, a video begins to play. Voices yell for a ventilator. Another voice urges someone to hang on. Hoin realizes this is a recording of experiments involving Shina's mother, and wonders why they had to hide it. The professor insists she already told him there was nothing strange. Hoin smirks. Does she really think normal experiment footage needs to be hidden? He tells her to keep watching. On screen, zombies are released as the woman prepares to fight. The professor watches in horror, asking what the hell she's looking at. Hoin asks why, if she'd been buried, she's suddenly turning into a zombie. The professor keeps denying it, clearly rattled. He presses further, why were there combat experiments if this was for humanity? He tells her just watch, see if she can still convince him now. The woman is in shock, unable to speak. She begins digging through the computer, asking why these files are hidden. A memory floods back. Someone once told her that with this experimental data, humanity could be saved. She recalls a man telling her to run, surrounded by zombies, handing her the results as humanity's last hope. Then she remembers an old man who said he was already useless at his age, but at least this would be his contribution to science and the future. The face of Shina's mother comes next, smiling and saying she trusted her. She remembers the professor promising to find her a proper place to be buried, so she wouldn't have to worry. Rage overtakes her, she slams her fist on the table, cursing that they deceived her all this time. Hoyne freezes, stunned at her outburst. She says every time she reported a problem, the professor and Zhang acted differently and never let her near the critically ill patients. She quickly starts typing. Hoyne asks what she's doing. She grips a hair tie between her teeth and says if they've been using sacrifices to build biological weapons. Then she's going to destroy this place completely. She ties her hair back in a ponytail. Hoyne asks if she's not making a copy since the vaccine isn't complete. She replies the necessary data is already saved. Hoyne smiles gently, saying she's no El Zhanger his hostage. She smiles back, saying they're accomplices now. Time is critical. While he burns the physical records, she wipes the digital data. Hoyne agrees it's a plan. Suddenly, a voice outside complains the door won't open, asking who's inside. Startled, Hoyne looks back. Have they returned already? The banging starts, people desperately trying to force the door. Zhang orders them to break it down. Inside, the professor tells Hoyne to hold the door. All she needs is to hit delete and it'll be over. Hoyne yells for her to hurry. He can't hold on much El Zhanger. The door bursts open. Zhang and the professor are shocked to find Hoyne sprawled on the ground. The professor demands to know what the woman is doing in his office. She answers that she's doing what should have been done El Zhang ago, and slams the delete key. The computer confirms, deletion command executing. Hoyne smiles weakly from the floor, saying she made it in time. The professor screams in despair as his life's work vanishes. He charges at her, shouting if she even knows what those recordings were for. She yells back that she does, and that's exactly why they need to be erased. He shouts they were vital for the future of humanity. She shoves him back, screaming that no, they're not the future at all. He rages, saying she doesn't understand. Humans are weak, they'll never survive. Grabbing a chair, he calls her a fool for destroying everything. He raises it high, ready to crush her, saying she deserves to be dragged down with the data. But Zhang, with his usual cold stare, finishes injecting something straight into the doctor's body. The professor freezes, eyes darting back at him. Zhang just smiles and asks, "Don't we have any vaccine left over there?" The professor shouts in rage, demanding if he even understands the consequences of what he's doing. With a grin, the man replies that the professor should have kept that last dose of the super vaccine, the one crafted from his combat data. He adds that instead, he'll be storing it inside his own body. The professor begins shaking, his voice trembling with curses as he spits out words at the man. Hyan then asks why Zhang would even develop something like that, and Zhang says it was obvious. Because he's only human and alone he could never survive, so he needed his own army. The boy insists that Zhang is underestimating himself. Zhang answers that some things never change, whether it's in the old world or the new one. He declares that survival is always the path forward, that the SDR Zhang consume the weak, and this truth has been the same since the beginning of time. The only difference, he says, is that the method has shifted. Now the weak serve as nourishment for the SDR Zhang to claim Zhanginance over the world. He reveals that his one goal has never wavered: to win. Whether it was using Cao and his abilities back then, or now standing on top of a mountain of corpses, that goal remained. The professor then demands to know if from the very first time they met, Zhang already planned to alter the virus's purpose. Zhang admits it, saying yes, and thanks to Professor Kan's cooperation, that plan became reality. Hyan mutters that the volunteers were nothing more than stepping stones like Xiaomai's brother. Zhang then asks why Zhang never just used the nutrients he cultivated himself. Zhang simply smiles. Hyan retorts that if that's the case, then Zhang has no right to blame those same nutrients for rebelling. Zhang shuts his eyes and shouts out, "Smoke grenade." Irritated, Zhang snaps back, saying this is exactly why he could never stand Hyan, always too clever for his own good. The professor, enraged, yells that he will never forgive Zhang. Zhang lowers his gaze, his cold eyes burning with malice. Pulling out a gun, he orders the professor to stop resisting and hurry up. He should just turn into a zombie already. Then he fires, adding that the professor once said he'd risk everything in the name of science, and that he truly admired his talent from the bottom of his heart. The professor collapses to the floor, grinding his teeth in unbearable pain. Smiling, Zhang declares that after this day, humanity will remember him forever. He goes on to claim that from now on, the spotlight bells Zhang's to him alone. His body begins to mutate, his thoughts screaming that if this is where he goes down, then he'll take everyone else with him. From outside the chamber, the professor's scream can be heard echoing. Hyan and the professor rush out, commenting that they were lucky the two turned on each other, otherwise, they'd have been pulled into it as well. Once outside, Hyan asks what they should do now, and the professor says they need to alert the camp immediately, because Professor Kan will soon become a monster. A man approaches in a panic, demanding to know what happened inside the lab, while Hyan tells him to gather every weapon they can. The man, baffled, asks why they should even prepare weapons, and why Zhang would want to send them all straight to God. The professor snaps that there's no time to explain, he has to trust her and evacuate now. The boy notes the exact moment the man becomes distracted. Suddenly, something crashes into the ground with massive force. Hyan freezes, he instantly recognizes the monster as Professor Kan. The people at camp erupt into panic at the sight of the mutant zombie. One man pulls a pistol, demanding to know why they're just standing around instead of shooting. Immediately, the camp unleashes a barrage of bullets at the massive mutant. The creature roars and charges toward the survivors. Some scream for help, others shout to activate the ultraviolet weapons, and many cry out to just run. Hyan urges the professor that they need to hide, but she tells him to wait. He warns that if they wait too Zhang, they'll be dragged down too. She insists she may have a way to send Professor Kan to meet God. Surprised, the boy asks what she means by that. At that exact moment, a nail-covered baseball bat slams down onto the ground. We see Yanjai recalling Kao's words, telling her to trust him, that he'd return soon. She also remembers him telling her to protect herself, so that while he was gone, she wouldn't be defeated. The next instant, she's shown with the spiked bat firmly in hand. She steps forward to face the massive mutant zombie, preparing to strike, as the monster simply stares at her in silence. Survivors scream for everyone to run, rocks blasting through the air from the chaos. A small boy runs, crying, begging the others to wait for him. The professor leaps in and shields him, saving him from a falling boulder. The boy then realizes the woman who saved him is Professor Zai. She quickly asks if he can still run, and he nods yes. She urges him to stay Zhang, telling him to run to Uncle Hu in the garden, while silently hoping Hyan finishes soon. Hyan, meanwhile, recalls hiding the first phase of the antibody sample in his dorm room, away from Professor Kan. He wonders if that might defeat the mutant. But he questions, how could he possibly inject it into the monster's body? Then suddenly an idea sparks in his mind. Out of nowhere, Yanjai crashes on top of him. Hyan instantly recognizes her. The capsule rolls far from him as they both hit the ground. Above them, the towering mutant looms, staring down with what looks like a twisted smile. His instincts scream at him to run, but his eyes dart toward the green vial. Summoning his courage, he dashes forward, shouting. At that moment, the giant zombie brings down a devastating strike aimed at him. Yanjai reacts faster, shoving him aside so the blow misses. Scrambling up, he calls out for Yanjai. He sees she's managed to grab the vial while dodging the attack. She twists the cap off, revealing a hidden needle. Hyan yells for her to throw the syringe straight into the zombie's mouth. She steadies herself for the throw. The needle shatters the monster's teeth and plunges into its mouth. Once again, Yanjai's blank expression and swirling energy return as she stands her ground. Hyan is stunned that her throw landed perfectly. The mutant drops to its knees, its body writhing as new mutations explode across its frame. Yanjai simply stands by the boy, silent, watching what will happen. The boy realizes they've finally brought the monster down, never imagining that Professor Kan would become a zombie through his own vaccine. He calls out to Yanjai, saying the other survivors now need their help. But something suddenly jolts him, making him whip his head around. Without warning, he's knocked to the ground. A metal spear-like object slams into the concrete, a red cloth tied to its tip. A hand then grabs hold of the cloth. Yanjai reappears, her expression blank as ever. Across from her stands a monster shaped like a massive red lion. Her empty gaze meets its many furious eyes, locked in a tense standoff. The beast charges, hurling a punch that crashes into the earth as Yanjai slides underneath it. She counters with a blow straight into its right knee, tearing a hole through it. Maintaining her cold stare, she vaults upward using the monster's back for height. The lion lets out an earth-shaking roar. It regains its balance. A sudden flash of light erupts near Yanjai's face. She unleashes a storm of lightning-fast strikes against the beast. Even so, the monster's face remains eerily expressionless as it endures her relentless flurry. Abruptly, it stretches one of its massive claws toward her, but she reads the attack and dodges. Then it slams its giant arm down, leaving her only enough time to raise her sword defensively. But the blade vanishes from her hands, a flicker of shock crossing her eyes. The beast capitalizes on it, kicking her brutally in the face. She's launched high into the air by the impact, but even through the pain she forces one eye open to look below, realizing just how Zhang that blow was as she continues to soar. In a split second, the beast appears beside her, preparing a devastating downward strike. It smashes her into the ground, the impact carving a crater through the concrete. The lion slams its weight down on her, growling softly as it looms above. The mutant zombie lowers its head, its jaws opening as it inches toward Yanjai. A gunshot cracks out, striking the beast on the snout. Hyan, holding a pistol nearby, demands the creature's attention. The mutant roars furiously back at him. In the next instant, the lion pounces, its punch striking the ground close to Hyan. He barely dodges as a cloud of dust erupts from the impact. Struggling to his feet, the boy mutters that he's always been the one to cling to life, relying on others just to survive. While running, he fires blindly behind him and yells at the beast, blaming it for everything. His spent casings clatter to the ground. The boy grins through his exhaustion, saying that when he comes back, they'd better be ready to hold Hoyen's funeral, just as the monster's claw swings down toward him. A massive impact shakes the ground, and a blinding flash wipes out the view. Out of nowhere, Zioyu kicks the lion's paw aside. Hoyen freezes, stunned, slowly piecing together what just happened. The moment he lays eyes on her, he knows for sure it's Zioyu. Kao rushes over to Yanjai, saying she'll recover after eating. Our hero turns to Hoyen, asking if he's alright. The boy nods, saying he is. Hoyen quickly blurts that Zhang and his group were studying how to evolve the virus artificially, and that the mutant they just saw was Professor Kan. Our hero tells Hoyen to take Yanjai somewhere safe. Nervously, Hoyen says he doesn't want to leave. The monster is too SDR Zhang, and if Zioyu fights alone, it could end badly. Kao answers that's exactly why he needs Hoyen to go. He explains that right now, Hoyen is the only one who can guarantee her escape. Lowering his head, Hoyen accepts and says he understands. Kao shoots him a quick sideways glance, telling him not to worry, he won't fall here. He adds that there are still unfinished matters he has to settle. Meanwhile, Zhang watches everything unfold from a nearby building's window. Elsewhere, someone complains that all this formality makes no sense as they stand outside Sunny Shore City Medical University. A woman mutters it's endless lectures, medical ethics repetition. They're already med students, they know all of it. She keeps questioning whether it was necessary to waste a whole morning holding a meeting and swearing an oath. A man shrugs, says he doesn't get it either, and asks Xiaoyi how that saying goes again. Smiling, Xiaoyi answers it's something like, words have power. He says once spoken aloud, they don't just linger in memory, they also become strength. Later, someone shouts that the car's fuel tank has a giant hole, clearly tampered with. The woman wonders if Zhang planned everything from the start. Next to Yanjai, Hyan says with all the noise they've made, the camp must already be surrounded by zombies, they can't stay here. The remaining survivors panic, saying they don't want to die, but that monster is still out there tearing through people. They turn to the professor, asking if they should hide or try escaping. After a pause, she decides they should head to the experimental test area. It was reinforced. Eventually, they reach Warehouse 2. Hoyen asks if this is the right place. The professor confirms, urging everyone to keep running, promising they'll be safe once inside. The mutant zombie suddenly reappears, growling. The survivors panic, but the professor yells not to stop, just keep running. One of the girls notices the zombie's headband, recognizing who it once was. Hoyen spots Yanjai veering off course while running. She stumbles and starts to fall. He rushes to catch her, telling her not to push herself too hard, while secretly thinking if the zombie breaks toward the crowd, they're all doomed. Watching from behind, the professor knows she must stop the monster somehow. She glances up, realizing the entrance is right there, just 3 more seconds. She thinks bitterly that the vaccine research would have to restart from scratch, and only she could interpret that data. She cannot afford mistakes now. She whispers an apology. A survivor looks at her, confused, asking what she means. She shoves the woman toward the doorway, shouting for everyone else to keep running. Then she charges directly at the mutant zombie. Gritting her teeth, she closes her eyes and keeps sprinting. Hoyen screams her name in desperation. As she runs, she recalls all the senior researchers who once put their trust in her. She thinks about how she let them all down, but then she realizes they all made the exact same choice she's making now. Her mind flashes back to her graduation when she first took her oath. From that day on, she always placed human life above all else. The monster opens its jaws, preparing to tear her apart. A white dove appears, wings spread, beak open. It soars through a swirl of dust. Zhang claps his hands slowly. He remarks how incredible it is, the courage humans show in their final moments. Turning, he asks if that isn't true. From behind a pillar, another man steps out of the shadows, agreeing. It's Kao mocking, sarcastically calling him friend as he cracks his neck. Both men's faces harden, the tension heavy in the air. Kao adjusts his stance, positioning his fingers, moving with precise calculation. The atmosphere thickens, unbearable with tension. Zhang reacts first, whipping out a gun at lightning speed and aiming straight at Kao. Our hero spots the weapon instantly. He dives behind a pillar as bullets smash into it. Zigzagging forward, he closes the distance while Zhang's shots keep missing. Grinding his teeth, Zhang swings the gun sideways. But Kao is faster, smacking the weapon from his hand. The gun fires into the air as Kao winds up his fist. His punch lands hard across Zhang's face. Zhang reels, shocked both at the pain and that the strike actually connected. He tries to counter with a kick, but Kao doesn't give him a chance, hammering him with another heavy punch. Our hero's face stays stone serious, locked on his goal. Zhang growls that reasons don't matter, not in the end. Cao snaps back, asking if it's really fine to trample people's lives and dignity. Smirking, Zhang answers that he doesn't care about anyone else. Cao's eyes blaze with fury. He says fine, at least now he understands everything about the man his friend became. He slams Zhang to the ground, pulls out a blade, and coldly tells him to be a better person in the next life. Raising his sword, he says goodbye to Zhang. With no emotion, no hesitation, he brings the blade down. The scene cuts to a massive fist colliding with a small, slender fist. The fight between the beast and Xiaoyu is still raging. The monster throws another crushing strike, sending Xiaoyu crashing into the ground. Its follow-up punch slams into the earth, detonating a massive shockwave that shakes the area. But at the center of the blast, Xiaoyu stands untouched, steady and unbroken. The beast, enraged, lets out a deafening roar. Now it's her turn. She channels raw energy into her fist, taking an aggressive stance. Her strike slams into the monster's gut. The energy erupts through its body and blasts out its back. In the pouring rain, Xiaoyu stands silently, watching with her cold, empty stare. The monster gasps, its breath faltering, struggling after the devastating hit. She leaps, landing between it and another survivor, shielding them with her own body. Then she charges again, throwing herself at the wounded beast with full power. A thunderous crash follows, a thick cloud of dust swallowing the scene. The view shifts. Someone says the boy couldn't win before, and wonders why he'd think he could now. With bare hands, he snaps the tip of our hero's sword. His glare sharpens as he warns his former friend not to take his eyes off him. Dust swirls upward and our hero quickly leaps back. He notices a syringe lying nearby, needle bent and empty. Zhang confirms it, that was the final result of his research. Xiaoyu staggers back into view, recovering from the blow she'd just taken. Zhang coldly says that to survive in this kind of world, you have to become a predator that never stops evolving. Later, Cao and Huyan talk. Our hero explains they're a team, he's the leader, the two girls are his assistants, and together they take on missions. He keeps explaining that their survival was only possible because they pooled their resources together, and that they'll keep managing that way for some time. After that, he turns to Huyan and asks if he wants to join them, since once this is over he has a plan, something bigger, something meaningful he wants to see through. Huyan freezes on the spot, his eyes wide, locked on our hero. The strike launches the boy several meters back. Zhang comments that Cao always lets emotions cloud his judgment, saying that if he had finished him earlier, maybe he wouldn't have had the chance to inject the vaccine. Cao pushes himself up and declares that ending him with one clean blow would be far too merciful for what he deserves. Zhang smirks and tells him the boy just wasted the final chance of his life to finish him. Our hero answers that he doesn't believe that's true. His former ally calls him stubborn as he charges in once more. Then the glint of a gun barrel appears. Huyan says he grabbed the weapon to back up Cao, never expecting things to spiral this way. He realizes Zhang actually turned into a mutant by his own will. Watching the fight, he sees our hero forced into a defensive stance. He doubts the gun will be enough to kill Zhang, but maybe it can at least buy a little time. The issue is he has only one bullet, and if he reveals his position, he's done for. Cold sweat trickles down his face as he carefully steadies his aim, calculating every fraction of his one chance. With a grin, Zhang stretches out his hand and declares that this is the end for Cao. He seizes Kaio's head and smashes it against the wall. Our hero reels from the pain of the blow, feeling firsthand the terrifying new strength of his mutated friend. Meanwhile, Huyan locks his focus, steadying his sight on the target. At last, he spots the perfect window to fire, but right in that instant, Zhang's eyes snap toward him. Hoya panics, his thoughts racing wildly. The shot goes off just as Huyan squeezes the trigger. He drops the gun immediately and takes off running, knowing his cover is blown. As he looks back over his shoulder, all he sees is Cao kneeling on the ground. Zhang is nowhere in sight and Huyan is left baffled, wondering where he could have gone. Out of nowhere, something tears straight through his torso. Stunned, Huyan lowers his gaze, watching in horror as his own body is pierced. Zhang suddenly steps into view, asking if Huyan had been looking for him. He remarks that a bullet was never going to stop him anyway, though he admits he didn't expect it to not even leave a scratch. Huyan is overwhelmed, caught in shock, confusion, and seething rage all at once. He digs into his back pocket, yanks out a grenade, and pulls the pin. Furious, he shouts that they'll both be going to hell together. But then, in disbelief, Huyan stares at his severed arm, unable to process what just happened. Zhang stands before him, expression grim and unflinching. Seconds later, the grenade detonates nearby. Cao, still on his knees, screams out Huyan's name. Weakness overtakes him and he collapses. With his voice trembling, he mutters to himself that he has to keep moving. Zhang says sneaking up on people isn't exactly wise and asks Huyan if he agrees. Barely able to speak, Huyan admits that if Zhang means he was reckless, then yes, he doesn't have much experience and still has a lot to learn. Zhang answers that he'll gladly teach him something. The tip of his tail splits into a gaping mouth, and he finishes by saying he'll show him what it means to truly use every part of himself. His tail lashes out again. The boy cries out in agony as Zhang muses aloud, wondering if he could even control someone he personally turned into a zombie. Just then Yan and Jiyu arrive on the scene, ready to step into the chaos. The man turns his head slowly, his eyes locking onto the new threat closing in. Yenji lifts a metal bar high and swings it down with full force, aiming straight for him. With a single swift motion, he intercepts the strike, ripping the weapon from her hands. He counters immediately, saying Yenji is far too slow to ever be considered a real opponent. His attack smashes down on Yenji's arm, twisting it with a sharp crack. With brutal strength, he hurls her against Xiaoyu, her arm limp and nearly torn from its socket. Cao, weak and battered, drags himself forward toward Huyan, calling out his name through the haze of pain. He tells the boy to stay quiet, insisting there must be some medicine that can still save him, and he orders the system to generate the roulette. The boy smiles faintly and tells him to just listen. He begins saying that before the apocalypse, Zhang had set him up, though he only realized it after he was fired. At the time, he admits he was a coward too afraid of losing his job to warn the directors or reach out to Cal. He adds that even though he changed after the apocalypse, when he saw Jean again, he still lacked the courage to confess the truth. Hoyne confesses that when they first ran into Jean, his real goal was to defeat him to avenge Cal, and that he had even planned to run away afterward, too ashamed to stay. But when Cal spoke about forming a new company, it changed his mind. Because deep down, he truly missed the old days when he could follow Cal. With his vision fading, he smiles and says he honestly wants to build a new company together with him. Moments later, we see Hyan's eyes close as a peaceful smile settles on his face. Cao grabs the boy's arm and breaks down, sobbing uncontrollably. He watches closely and accepts without question that Huyan is gone. The scene pans down slowly to Huyan's cold, lifeless hand on the floor. Then suddenly, the hand clenches tightly, as if something inside triggered it. Looking up, he sees Hyan now standing, reanimated as a zombie. A sharp noise behind Cao snaps his attention and he spins around. Zhang raises his voice, ordering zombie Hyan to kill Cao without hesitation. Our hero, overcome with rage, screams curses at Jie Zhang, losing all self-control. Huyan lunges, leaping at Cao with both arms raised to strike. He throws a flurry of savage punches, but Cao keeps dodging, staying focused on survival. Di Zhang sneers, asking Cao what's WR Zhang, why can't he fight back? As Keel grits his teeth in pain, Zhang says that's the expression he was waiting for, telling his old friend to entertain him more. He adds that if Cao doesn't defeat Huyan, then Huyan will end up defeating him. Forced backward step after step, our hero finally stumbles over a stone. He starts to fall as zombie Huyan lunges in, jaws wide open. From a pile of supplies, something bursts out at terrifying speed. A fleeting glimpse reveals Xiaoyu. She arrives just in time, pressing her hand against Huyan's face to stop the bite. Di Zhang glares at the girl and calls her nothing more than an obstacle. He brings 2 fingers to his mouth and whistles sharply. A thunderous crash erupts behind him as something lands with heavy force. A monstrous beast resembling an enormous bear appears, and he orders it to tear apart the zombie girl. The beast immediately leaps toward its target. The zombie girl clutches a U-shaped metal fragment, holding it as an improvised weapon. Using it, she pins zombie Hyan by the neck against the wall. But the next instant, the monster is already behind Xiaoyu. She spins around, determination blazing in her eyes, bracing to face this new threat. Before the beast can strike, Hale swoops in with his sword, slashing across its massive hands. He yells that he's already lost Huyan, and he can't lose Xiaoyu as well. But then he admits he can't move anymore. He is hurled aside too, left gravely wounded, while Zhang stands with arms folded. Zhang tells Cao to take a look at his precious allies now, reduced to broken dolls. Smiling, he asks if the boy still values his employees above all else, when one is about to shatter before his eyes. The system announces that Xiaoyu has refused his command. Cao begs her not to throw her life away and just run. The system repeats that Xiaoyu has declined his order. He insists that as Zhang as she stays alive, she can always find another path. But when she doesn't move, he yells again for her to leave, saying she can survive if she walks away from him. For the first time, the zombie girl speaks, uttering a single word, no. She repeats it firmly, no. Then she takes a fighting stance and adds one more word, desista, don't give up. Suddenly, he finds himself standing outside the very building where he once lived. From behind, a voice says they've finally found him, and Cao turns to see who it is. There stands Yoyu, smiling brightly, saying she has at last found her boss, Cao. She pauses, wondering what she should even say when she meets him. After all, he probably wouldn't remember her, she was only an intern back then. The girl nervously starts rehearsing all sorts of wild conversations, mimicking voices in her head. Cao can't help but laugh as he watches her fumble between thoughts, so indecisive and scattered. She shuts her eyes briefly, exhales a Zhang sigh, trying to steady her mind. Finally, she settles on one line she once heard, that the boss isn't doing well, so she came to check on him, hoping her visit might lift his spirits. Carol Jung continues, admitting that ever since she ran away from home, she has always questioned whether she chose the right path, never truly knowing where she Bell Zhang. She says all she really wishes is for him to smile again, to keep pushing forward, and to hold on to the ideals he always believed in. In her memory, the girl smiles softly, as if she were seeing him smiling back only for her. Then she shakes her head and mutters why she's even voicing her feelings aloud. She reminds herself she needs to keep practicing until she can talk to the real person. She then stops someone passing by, asking how to reach apartment number 33. When the old man doesn't answer, she calls out once more. He slowly turns, and the moment she sees his face, she realizes he's a zombie. That was the instant Shiori became the zombie girl. Cal finally pieces it together, the reason Zuyo appeared near his home. He glances at her from the side and says, until the very end. He knows he has to lift his spirits. She extends her hand toward him. With her hand still outstretched, she calls him boss and smiles warmly. The system chimes in, declaring that Zayooyu has now been promoted to an elite staff member. Zayooyu, glowing with a golden aura and still smiling, reaches her hand to Kao again and urges him to cheer up. The boy smiles back at her, takes her hand firmly, and replies with a simple yes. Their hands meet in the air, firm and resolute, forming a silent bond between them. She pulls him to his feet, her body still radiating that golden glow, as the system announces a new update. The bond function has been activated. Just as the monster lunges at them, the system adds that while Kao remains on the battlefield, her attack and defense are enhanced, and she unlocks a brand new ability. Together, they slip past the monster's strike with ease, letting its attack slam violently into the ground. The beast snarls at them with burning rage, preparing another assault. Shailu steadies herself for battle, still wearing that joyful smile. Dust swirls thick between the pillars of the building, stirred up by their Zhangguang clash. In that haze, Jie Zhang takes his chance, darting in from behind Kao to launch an attack. But Kao shows no panic, no urgency, he just casts a calm glance over his shoulder. Zhang then unleashes his sudden, ferocious strike. Yet by the time it lands, Kao is no El Zhanger there. Di Zhang freezes, baffled a moment ago the boy was right in front of him. He quickly realizes Kao had moved to pull Yanji from the rubble, now cradling her in his arms. Zhang can only stare, muttering in disbelief, asking what kind of speed that was, whispering that Kao is beyond reason.